Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermond. Otherwise known as the Impatient Gamer, I use speedrun strats to avoid basic combat encounters, and I've been training for 5 months for my run to the Nightmare Headstone. I'm joined by fellow podcast progenitor, the man who is both willing to create a spreadsheet to strategically optimize his approach to virtual battles, and yet compelled to seek out the games that move him. The living embodiment of the robot who learned to love, JJ Artemis.
Hello.
And of course, my equal but opposite. He's wielded more virtual blades than a Monolith Soft protagonist. He plays JRPGs for the story, and by some accounts, he may be the only one among us who actually enjoys playing video games. Andy Kinnick.
Hello.
And we're joined remotely by the man whose aesthetic lies somewhere between the long arm of the law and the arm from Twin Peaks. He's done more comprehensive due diligence in his 5 appearances than we have in the other 95 episodes combined. Daniel Otten.
Hey there.
And the mayor of every virtual town she's ever inhabited, the woman who still hates us for recording over 12 hours on Dark Souls, but never even mentioning Dragon Age, Janelle Vickers.
Hey guys.
And he's last, but certainly 3 steps ahead. He'll take out the reptile, first of all, and is a guy with a sword who punches things when not in-game. He's the fool's choice and the children's choice, Stephen Otten.
Hey.
And today, we're going to be talking about the Jackbox Party Pack.
But first, if you enjoy the content, if you could give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
And the Jackbox Party Pack is developed by Jackbox Games and was released, it says right here on my official paper about this, in 2014 for everything.
It's made its way onto everything over time.
Yeah. And that's more or less true. I feel like before we get into it, properly, we should address the reason for such a long and really breathy, exhausting, storied intro, is that this is in fact our 100th episode, and all of our special guests here are here to celebrate that. The choice of this game, or these games, plural, came a lot from the fact that we wanted to get everyone together, and this is a game that we sort of collectively have all enjoyed over the last several years. Like, since the beginning of this podcast, we've been playing these games.
Yeah, it matches up about the same time.
Yeah, 2014 to 2015, there's like a 1-year gap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's difficult to say how we want to actually begin on this, because these, like, collections are each within themselves 5 games apiece, and we're going to talk about the first 6 of them, and that's 30 whole games, which I think is more than we've ever covered on one episode.
We're going at a breakneck pace so far to get through all 30 of them one at a time.
Pokemon would be the only thing
that would be close.
Yeah.
And even then, we didn't really talk about
most of them.
Mm-hmm. So expect us to not again.
I came here expecting like the hyper lightning round where all 6 of us would get exactly 20 seconds to like summarize their thoughts about each game in just a circle over and over
with like
again.
a Jeopardy buzzer.
Yes.
Yeah, I have thoughts about the games in general, like that would go along in line with what Chad was saying. I just didn't want to hijack it. I was trying to let you guys do your thing. I'm here as a guest only. I know I was a guest on the greatest episode of No Clip, the Rascal episode.
Yes.
But I don't want to take over, but you talk about the way the game came out around the same time as you started doing the podcast, like 2014. And for me, that's like, it's interesting because that's Jackbox. It kind of lines up with, if my memory is correct, that it kind of lines up with when I started being, I feel like, more of a part of this group of friends, if that makes sense. Like, I know all you guys, I've known all you guys forever. Like, me and Dan were brothers and we grew up. Obviously, like, Andrew's our cousin, and I went to high school with Chad and JJ, and Dan and Janelle have been together forever. But, like, for me, actually like really being a part of the stuff that you guys do as a group, because you were always like a tight group of friends in high school, and I was a few years older than you guys, and so we weren't super close then. But then in college, when Daniel was in college, I was coming back to visit, and he was like invited me to play Jackbox with you guys. I feel like was one of the kind of early things. It was before we started playing D&D together. It was obviously like years
It was before we started doing literally everything together.
Yeah, like basically we exist.
Probably like a Halloween thing
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, I was in town for Halloween, and it might have been Halloween or something else, but I was in town and it was like, oh, we're going to play this game Jackbox. It's like a fun party game. And so I feel like this is kind of foundational for me, like for our whole relationship as friends in this like group. Because it then, like, obviously it's not because of Jackbox, but it was like the first thing we did together, and then obviously now we do literally everything together. So
I mean, it was either Halloween or you were dressed
Or I
like
just wore a
Snake
costume.
Plissken for another reason.
I wear wigs frequently and put tattoos on my stomach of snakes. It's a thing that I like to do.
No, and that's actually a good point. Like, a lot of the success that these games even, have seen comes from sort of, like, really nailing the party game atmosphere in a way that most other video game versions of these just, like, cannot. The first innovation, which may not really be, like, an innovation that I do want to call out, is the fact that it does use phones as its like input device. You go to a website, you punch in a room code, and then from there you can interact. And that's hugely different because, one, everyone already has access to it. It allows them to make their like the player numbers a lot higher. And as we have done, and presumably will have some sort of like footage of this happening on the YouTube version of it, it allows you to play remotely, which is also something you can't really do with a regular console party game.
Yeah, it's super accessible. Like, I took this over to my parents' house. Like, I can't believe I'd never done it before. Like, just recently. And, like, you know, like, my mom isn't, like, super, like, tech savvy. Like, you know, like, she's one of those people that will ask for help doing things on her phone. But, like, she can jump right in and play easily, and it's just like one person needs to have the game, and these games are very funny in a way that like you feel like you're participating in it even if you're not super funny yourself, you know, like you get it. They're very inclusive and approachable.
I'm glad to hear that perspective as somebody who is
super funny
Yeah.
and smart. Chad Rutherman.
Well, actually, that's an
interesting.
interesting thing that you say. Like, they are approachable and fun to play kind of with anybody. I've had the experience of bringing Jackbox to like new groups of people who've never played before. Some of my friends that I hope don't listen to this episode because I'm about to shit on them. And like,
Get fucked.
yeah,
Get real.
It's obviously like I love playing with you guys. We have a great time playing a lot of the games like in the various different Jackbox party packs, and I feel like in some ways it's like a mistake for me to bring it to a new audience who doesn't play it frequently and isn't as quick as like, you know, like we, I don't want to say we are, because that feels like I'm just like blowing up my own ego, but like I feel like most of us
We've already established this is a navel gazing episode.
Yeah,
so
let's
let's
just
bring it on.
Anybody who's listening agrees that we're all hilarious, and so we're
Obviously.
and like just so fast sometimes with jokes, and it, especially with games like Quiplash, like I'm used to playing with people who are really quick and funny and know how to do it. And it's like when you take it, I know Andrew's experience with his parents might be different, but my experience bringing this to people who don't play it, who have never played it before, and aren't like super comfortable with improv or role playing like type things like we are, I feel like they can be a little bit slower to make the funny jokes that make a lot of these games a good time. Like many of these games rely on the players being really funny and engaging, and otherwise it's just like, oh, like T-shirt, I'm just gonna draw a circle, I suck at drawing, so here's a stick person, like, and it can kind of suck. So I've had an interesting relationship with it, where if you bring it to the wrong group of people, maybe it's not as much fun because you're not bringing that right energy to it. Like if you bring that big improv podcast D&D energy that you guys bring to anything you do, like it's gonna be fun.
Well, but I
Yeah,
think
I
we
think-
also,
You can go ahead.
as a group, we also kind of shift the way that the games operate for our group dynamic. So, for example, when we're playing, what's the one? Not Quiplash. I always forget the name of it. Fibbage. Where it's not meant to necessarily be the goofiest or the funniest answer that wins. It's supposed to be metagaming where you're able to trick each other into choosing a answer that is actually incorrect. So we can do that, and I think we're successful at it because we've all known each other for so long that we can input a lie that will trick some of the other people. But then, of course, we play Fibbage the Thumbs Cup way because we all want to be goofy and put in goofy lies. And then we're rewarding each other, not for tricking each other with the fake truth, quote unquote, but because we're able to be like that kind of quick wit dynamic that we have as a group. So I think there is a certain level of customizability and a certain level where you can pick your group's dynamic going into a game. And if it's not a really comedy heavy group or more of a improv-y type group, I think that there are other games that are more suitable in that way. So like if you're playing just straight Fibbage, it's not about who's the funniest, it's about who can come up with the most convincing lie. So I think that that might be a more accessible game. Whereas something like a Quiplash, you definitely have to sort of know your group dynamic and know the audience and know that people are going to be comfortable enough to sort of put themselves out there and make the funny joke.
Yeah, at the risk of this becoming the Quiplash and Fibbage podcast, it is pretty apparent as we go on that like those are two like really standout games. But I want to posit that I think that Quiplash as a game was created because of Thumbs Cup, like the way that we decided to start playing Fibbage.
Yeah, because at the end of Fibbage, it has a little thing while like the credits go by that it's like it says Thumbs Cup. It's got a trophy, and it says the person who got the most thumbs up. And so we just turned that into our own rule set, where like everyone just tries to say the funniest thing.
Right, and I know that we are not unique in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like somebody had that experience where they were playing the game and they enjoyed it, and they thought, like, I love when somebody can't come up with an answer and just puts in something that's ridiculous. I think that Quiplash fails to emulate this in a way that, like, the Thumbs Cup rule for Fibbage is still relevant, because Quiplash doesn't give you the backstory of the question. Like, the hallmark element of a Fibbage question is that there is a lot of surrounding detail so that you can make your lie tailored to parts of it so that it becomes more believable. Whereas in Quiplash, it's just like, oh, Justin Bieber was seen doing blank. And then you're like, I don't know, pooping. And then you just hope that everybody finds that funny. And it's a lot harder to come up with something that is like genuinely like related and good.
Yeah, there's like an extra layer when you do it in Fibbage.
Like that burrito that Justin Bieber ate.
Yeah,
sideways.
that made him poop.
Got him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think Quiplash, like, I don't know. I have a very hot and cold relationship with Quiplash because I do think it can be very fun. The final round is like horribly designed. I talk about this every time we play it, but like the style of like the question that they ask is like set up so that no one can say anything funny. But as you were describing the difference between Thumbs Cup, Fibbage, and Quiplash, it occurred to me that like Quiplash is not that far away from like Cards Against Humanity in like the setup
Right.
and delivery, and I think that's basically what you're describing. Like, it's a very like quick reaction, like shock value type humor if you are able to be funny in Quiplash, because it's like a short sentence and then a punctuation mark, as opposed to Fibbage that like has the detail. So I think that like on balance, Fibbage has a much higher ceiling for being funnier for that reason, whereas Quiplash is
Yeah,
just
there-
like at best you laugh at how ridiculous it is, but it's because it like was a shock value thing.
Yeah, in Quiplash, it's just two different answers pitted against each other. So I think that's like you get in a more competitive mindset. You're like, I just need to say the funnier thing that's super funny,
Right.
and like so people will pick it.
That's why
And
I
with
say
Fibbage-
Helen Keller every time on Quiplash.
Yeah,
And it's funny every time.
but with Fibbage, it's like 6 answers. So like you want to like make your answer unique from a crowd. So you want to be more clever, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing that I said earlier about like if you play with a crowd that's not as quick and witty, you end up in the same problem that you do playing Cards Against Humanity with those people, which is my least favorite experience in the entire world.
I was really just baiting Steven by
I
bringing
know.
up Cards Against
As
Humanity.
soon as you said Cards Against Humanity, I was like, well, this is for me. But like,
It is genuinely like the worst game that's
Yes.
ever.
It's
become
quite bad
popular.
game. We all agree.
yeah, it's garbage, and
It-
it's just that
It's fun like one time, basically.
it's like if you played Cards Against Humanity, if we played Cards Against Humanity, I bet we could kind of have some fun, and that people would like pick answers that made relevant sense as cards put together. But your typical Cards Against Humanity is who has the card that says pissing on Hitler's face, or like some like a gross butthole, like whatever
These are all comedy gold.
these good cards that are hysterical.
Andy just cannot contain himself.
like oh, this
I'm
big,
just here for a good time.
yeah, this boner is hilarious. Like whatever. The way to win Cards Against Humanity is to just have the card that says boner on it, and everybody think it's hilarious because it's gross and weird. Like
So many good
I
episode
really love
titles
that
already.
contrast.
I'm just full of that
Like-
gold. But like Quiplash can be like that for sure. But again, like only if you play with the wrong group. If you play with people who aren't able to come up with a clever answer, they'll just throw out some gross shock value bullshit, and it's not going to be actually funny. So I think Quiplash obviously can be really good if you're playing with the right people, but it really exemplifies that thing of it's got to be the right audience.
And Cards Against Humanity, in comparison to a lot of these complete open-ended question games, like, you're correct in that the structure of the design means that you have a limited number of answers that are provided to you in advance, which caps the ceiling of how funny anything can be comparatively very low. But I think part of the reason that those games are so popular is because they also raise the floor to the level of pissing on Hitler's face, which
Should be a
It was
card.
Still
it's not,
funny.
I guess.
Still funny.
right?
Yeah, give Steven a check. Cards Against Humanity. Come on.
I'm actually surprised that one wasn't real. I've not played enough to know.
It could
Maybe.
be.
Yeah, but like, so that's the kind of variance that we're to talk about, not just in comparison to this game with Cards Against Humanity, but between all of these different Jackbox party games. Is that the more rails that you put on, the oftentimes slightly more accessible the individual games can be for someone if they don't feel pressured to be the funniest person right at that moment. But the more freeform any of the responses are allowed to be, or the more complex context that you add to the question, like in Fibbage, it also allows the ceiling to be a lot higher in a lot more tightly knit groups. That's a trade-off that I think, like, yes, with all of us, we should obviously play Fibbage every single time. But there's a reason why so many office parties, when you get together people who are like, "Oh, I'm the rowdy one," chooses something way closer.
That's
to
that's
Cards
you in
Against
this
Humanity.
group, JJ, by the way. You're the rowdy one.
I am. Yes, thank you.
But you do miss that floor sometimes, though. Like, even in Quiplash, sometimes you just don't have it, or like the prompt is just not jiving. This happens to me, I feel like, more than anyone. Maybe that's just my perception when we play Quiplash, but like, it sucks when like I have to sign my name to this as like, here's something I thought was funny, and like you just can't
100%.
put. It's like you just know it's bad. That's a pretty shitty feeling.
Yeah.
Just to preempt the no clip, the on and no clip pocket that we're doing right now about Cards Against Humanity. It's just not very good. It's a lot of dumb humor and nobody plays it correctly. Apples to Apples is just better.
That's true, but I also think you run into the problem of you have a finite amount of cards. which is something that these party packs remedy because there's Fibbage, Fibbage 2, and Fibbage 3. So
Yeah.
if like you know all the questions in Fibbage 1 or you're starting to recognize them, you can switch to 2 and to 3.
In case anyone in the audience had doubts of how often we have played the Fibbage games, we have just gotten used to some of the questions
I was
in the
pl-
first
yeah,
2 games.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was playing with my parents recently, and there were like 2 questions that like I was like, oh, I remember this one,
Mhm.
and I was able to get it right and act like I was super smart.
It's a classy move by
but-
you, Andrew.
It is, yeah. You know, you got to take what you can get in this short, terrible life that we all live.
So did you pretend that you guessed it correctly randomly, or did you like really screw it in and was like, oh, I learned about this in AP
Oh no,
US
I
history?
was just kind of like, yeah, I did, like showboating, like regular, like yeah, suck it. But I didn't say that because I was at my parents' house. But
You don't tell your parents to suck it?
no, I don't.
Oh.
That's not the kind of relationship we have, AJ.
I'm not trying to diminish the value of your relationship. I tell my dad to suck it all the time, and I just wanted to. I like exploring the possibility space of possible familial relationships. It's interesting to me.
But I mean, I guess
I feel like we
kind
should
of-
start our own spin-off con.
kind of pivoting from that.
Yeah, pivot from this dark path that
Yeah.
we're about to go down.
Casually,
This dark,
a
possibly
casual pivot.
illegal path.
But what I was going to say is that it's not, even though we clearly are latching on to the games that are focused more on, like, inter-group dynamics with either comedy or, like, one-upsmanship, where we think we can kind of pull the wool over each other's eyes because of how well we know each other. Like, I like that there is more diversity. It's not just a bunch of comedy games. So there are strategy games. The Bidiots, the one where we all made the art and
Right.
hit on each other, like there's a certain level of strategy to that, of knowing if someone else is overbid, or knowing that they had to take out a loan, and they give you that, like, screw where you have to pick someone else and force them to bid on something when you know that it's only worth,
Right.
like, a $400.
If you're wondering who took out a loan, it was Steven at every available opportunity to take a loan
I found the limit of
And
predatory
no one else
loans.
took any.
He hit his credit limit pretty hard.
But, and then...
That is classic Steven.
And then there's the Monster Seeking Monster, where everyone has their own secret agenda, and you're trying to figure out what everyone else's agenda is, and not feed into that, while also furthering your own aims. So, you know, there's strategy, there's more of the kind of cloak and dagger style party game. There's a lot of art-based games, which can lean more comedy, but can also lean just regular, everyone has fat fingers and is trying to produce something on a phone, which is fun, kind of endearing to do as a group, because no one is going to be good at it. So I like that it does kind of depend on the group or what the mood is, and you can have, like, a different experience depending on what games you want to play. Oh, and then the trivia games, of course. How could I forget? As the official.
You are the reigning, trivia murder party champion, Janelle Vickers.
I know. So, yeah, so I like that aspect of it too, where even if we get tired of Fibbage, we can deviate and play some other games and maybe return to it again at the end of the night.
Tired of Fibbage.
It happens, believe me.
Yeah, there was a time where we were playing a lot that we got kind of tired of it.
We can get there, but that seems like more our problem than the game's problem.
Mhm.
But either way, yeah, I'm super sympathetic to that, Janelle. Like, I really wish that I could have been like a fly on the wall in a lot of the design meetings for the later iterations of these games, because the kind of design questions that you hit when trying to build a party game like this compared to, the more conventional kind of video game structures that we talk about here are so different. You're not necessarily building one curated experience, or even in like a multiplayer game. I guess in that sense, it's actually a little bit closer to like something like an MMO in terms of goals in that way, because what you're creating when you're creating a party game is a possibility space that you have to rely on your players to build. Like, you're creating a space in which they create the thing that's supposed to be entertaining about the game, and you have, a relative amount of different choices of how many training wheels you want to put on, how much you want to allow them to deviate from the path, and thereby increase the variance and how enjoyable or not enjoyable the experience might be. It's not the kind of question that you're usually faced with when you're having to author content like that.
And not to mention that it's going to be packed in with 4 other games, which may or may not be similar in some way. So you have to be able to produce something that... Because my assumption, and I don't know if this is true, this is based on the fact that they've released several games as standalones, that they create each game and then actually will collect them. And so there will be some things that are made specifically for the pack and other things that are being made and then incorporated into it. And yeah, like I can imagine like coming up with something and taking all of that into consideration, and then also have to be like, why would somebody pick this over a different thing? Like, what's the differentiating factor?
Yeah, to me, and this might just be my own tastes and perception, but it always seems like each pack has 2 heavy hitters, like standalone games, and the everything else kind of feels like, let's throw something at the wall and see like what sticks.
Word spud.
Yeah,
I was gonna
like,
say,
just
just throw
throw in
word
a-
spud.
Yeah, just throw in a weird thing that will be like 3 people's favorite game in the pack.
3 people total, not like...
Yeah, 3 people ever.
I want to meet the guy who was real into word spud.
We had fun.
It's a
I
weird.
was like, yeah, WordSpud was good. We're not shitting on WordSpud.
I'm
Yeah.
shitting out words, but
I can't
don't
even
think
remember
we played
which
it
one
right
Word-
either
WordSpud
time.
Wordspud was the one where you added a word or a phrase, and then the next person had to continue.
It took us 2
respond.
times to figure out what we were supposed to actually do.
Yeah, we ended
I
up
don't
having
even-
fun with that.
I don't know if we really figured out what we were supposed to
We
do.
didn't.
I'm not
Like,
convinced.
neither way seemed like it was the correct way necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I don't know if it warrants an explanation, but like the way that
'Cause,
Wordspud
yeah, JJ's
works,
probably never played it.
I know you played it like once. I was there one
Ah.
time we were together and we were confused by it and left it behind quickly.
That makes
Yeah.
Because
sense.
in a party atmosphere, you have no patience for games that don't explain themselves to you immediately and intuitively, because every moment of reading the words is one less minute you get to party.
It's the
Exactly.
treaty virus all over again.
I mean, because that's the problem, is that it's either the explanation was too long or not good enough, because in the end it felt like a Mad Lib, but all of the preset text wasn't there. It just gives you one word to start on, and then you just have to like make shit up from that point on.
It almost seems like they were watching Who's Line and they were like, 1-word story, let's like make that a game, but then
Right.
not tell them that's what the idea we're going with.
It's true.
I have a challenge for all of you that I feel like can get us into some interesting philosophical depths.
Okay. Is it morally right to name the 100th episode of the podcast Funny Boner? Because that's what I've been sort of like struggling with for the last 20 minutes.
It's more of an ethical thing that I do not want to touch on yet. just I want to narrow in specifically. I want to see if you guys can explain to me, strange robot-like person, why trivia is fun.
Oh yeah, you don't like trivia.
I've never liked trivia in any form. The what's the murder
Trivia
house?
Murder Party.
Trivia Murder Party. It's amusing because of the window dressing. It's a funny thing to watch play out. I've never liked it in the way that you guys like it, but I fully accept that this is me not somehow grasping this like central feature of human culture for hundreds of years.
I think it's a person who remembers things kind of game.
Oh, is that?
Is that
Yeah.
what trivia is?
Put that on the back.
Yeah,
of the bin.
it's satisfying to be able to like recall like facts from the well of useless knowledge you have collected in your brain.
Okay, this is actually a more interesting take than I expected, because I don't agree with
Because
it.
like I'm not super good at trivia.
I feel
either,
like
but I
Andy
really
is
enjoy
describing
it.
how to play trivia, not why it's fun.
I think that's why it's fun. Like it's satisfying. Like when a question comes up and you know the answer, it's like an endorphin rush. Like, oh, I know that.
Yeah, I agree with that, if that's what you're saying. Like, I honestly
Yeah,
think
that
it's,
is- yeah.
I think it's as simple as, like, it feels good to feel like you are the kind of person who knows the answer. Like, I don't know. I'd love to hear an alternative explanation, because otherwise, like the game is like inherently a little ridiculous.
But what?
No. See, okay, I'm going to provide the alternative explanation.
Okay,
Then,
all right.
then you can rebuke. The reason that trivia is fun is because there are other people, and you want to be smarter and therefore better than they are. Like, Trivia Murder Party is good because it has literal standings that at the end you get to, like, race to the finish by answering questions. Like, the act of answering questions to me is not, like, the most enjoyable thing in the world.
Yeah, I'm
But winning is.
yeah, I'm of an opposite mind on that. Because yeah, like the competitive nature of it is not what I like about trivia.
So would you enjoy watching?
So Janelle had her hand up, by the way.
Oh no, she was
Well,
just
that she was
establishing
claiming-
dominance.
It's. I mean,
Yeah.
I literally was just crowned the reigning champion of trivia.
Mhm.
Mhm.
No one wants my take, and
I do.
also I feel very attacked because apparently I'm a narcissist who likes to watch other people fail. But for me, I enjoy the acquisition of knowledge for knowledge's sake. Like, I'm listening to a podcast or an audiobook about the Plantagenet royal dynasty, one of the first ruling families of England, and it's like, where the fuck am I ever going to use that knowledge? No one wants to hear me talk about it, but trivia is a way for me to kind of apply the things that I've used, other than just learning things because I like learning them. There is actually an application for that, even if it is something as silly as a game that we all play when we get together, and that I enjoy.
So then,
It's less
what you're-
for me of the winning and the more the knowledge that something that I have acquired I'm then able to use in another form or fashion.
but surely it can't be all retroactive knowledge, right? Are you saying that like the fun of trivia is when the question ends and you get to see the actual right answer,
Yes.
right or wrong? Is
That
that the
too,
moment when you're
yes.
like, oh, that's cool? Okay.
I also, yeah, because part of it is also a learning thing. So there are times when I don't know the answer, but I'm actually very curious to know the correct answer.
You guys know the scene in Groundhog Day, the greatest movie ever made,
Mhm.
where Bill Murray is like just like getting hammered and watching Jeopardy for like presumably the 10,000th time, and he's just like
Saying all the answers.
like absent-mindedly like saying all the correct answers, and everyone is like, "Look at this fucking genius." I feel like that is like the purest distillation of like for people for whom trivia is fun. Like that is the ultimate wish fulfillment. Is like I'm just a casual genius, and everyone recognizes how smart I am. And like I know that sounds
I
like a
feel-
read, but like,
No, I
Literally,
feel
this
like
whole
that's
thing
the
feels
per-
like a read. I might have to
Yeah.
just jump out.
and I like trivia, so I'm not like
And he also likes me, I think.
I
Yeah,
really
I think
like
that's, like,
Groundhog
the-
Day.
Yeah, I think that's like the perfect representation, actually, because I think that encompasses all of what we've said. Like, you get to feel smart and like you're the best, like a casual genius, and you get that satisfaction of like being able to know a thing and like impress people. Like, yeah, I think that's actually a really good example.
Yeah.
Because clearly the only reason Bill Murray said those things in character at that moment in the film was to dunk on all the old people that he was drunk around.
Right.
Like, there's no other reason for him to say it aloud other than to
Oh, he's trying to entertain himself because he's lived the same day like 8,000 times.
correct.
That's why he watched Jeopardy 10,000 times. The time that he watched Jeopardy in a public space was to dunk on the elderly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Daniel really definitely nailed it with that. I mean, do you guys, when you're watching Jeopardy as a trivia game, like, if assuming you have ever watched Jeopardy like in your house, do you say the answers out loud when you know the answers? Because I totally do, and like,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, like, I just-
And I feel like
say
an
the answer
awesome
out loud.
genius when I get it right.
Yeah, but see,
Yeah.
I don't do it to dunk on anyone or to feel superior to anyone because there's no one around to be
But,
superior to.
Janelle only does it if there's an old person around.
Yeah,
but-
I hate the elderly.
I do it
I
to
mean-
feel superior to like the competitors if I answer before them.
I mean,
like
I think
I'm down with feeling like, yeah, I'm on the
No,
trivia. I'm on the side of trivia is fun. That is I want to be smarter than everybody and show it to them in their face. Like,
I mean,
I knew that you'd
side
be
of
on the
it.
same
I know
page,
that
Chad,
surprises
on that.
no one on this particular call, but that is my take on why trivia is fun. Is
We're
when
all
I know
really
the
casting
answers.
ourselves in a very very favorable light on this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I think like feeling like you've impressed the other people by saying the right answer is different than feeling superior to them.
Can it be both?
It could, yes, it very
Can it
well
be
can.
both?
Yes.
Good. Okay, Janelle, hypothetical for you specifically. Would you watch a version of Jeopardy that had no people on it and was literally just like the slides that they use in Jeopardy with the question and then the answer on it, just kind of
Yes.
cycling one after the other?
Yes.
That's called school. It's got a really free-form slapshot school, but it is just
And that's called-
teaching
Is
you
it- it's that Montessori?
That's called a textbook.
Yeah, like
I
well, a
liked all
textbook,
of those
a really
things.
directionless textbook.
In contrast, it is a very directioned textbook. It's a textbook with one exact direction, one after the other.
It's true,
very
yeah.
prescribed.
And categories, presumably.
Oh yeah, give
Yeah.
me the categories too.
Potent potables.
I love the
JJ.
potent potables category.
Why do you dislike trivia?
Because I feel like I have no agency over the process of trivia. I like in most games, to some extent or another, I feel like in a way that's
It's because you can't dodge roll.
metaphorically. And I can't. Yeah, actually, it's not. That's not that far off base with this.
If only I could dodge around the questions.
Correct.
I'd still get the points.
The kind of things that I do for fun and entertainment, and you guys can call me out on this if you remember examples otherwise, are things where, like almost like a form of exercise, there's some kind of exertion component where, like, I feel like if I try hard enough, I can get better at the thing in the moment. So in the same way that when you're playing Dark Souls, the best video game, you can
Got
get
it.
better. Each individual moment is full of discrete choices that you can improve upon. In comparison to trivia, where I feel like the consequence of whether or not I will answer the question correctly every time a discrete question comes up has nothing to do with me. It could have had a lot to do with what I did in the past if I was like an intense trivia person, but because the whole concept of trivia precludes the idea of you knowing the category before you actually get there to talk about it, like it would be unfair if people had that kind of prior information in the first place. It feels like it's always a dice roll, whether in the past or in the present. It's either a dice roll in the past where you have to choose what you're researching, or a dice roll in the present where you don't get to pick anything about what comes up, and you only in a binary fashion know the answer or don't, or randomly pick it. Like, it feels like I'm not doing anything. It feels like I'm playing out a script based on nodes of information in my mind, and it makes it not feel like a game to me.
I think actually we can spin that back into talking about the Jackbox Party Pack. Because we brought this all up in context of Trivia Murder Party, which, if you listen to the podcast for any length of time, you know that at least several of us have a certain proclivity for horror, and like that set dressing makes it enjoyable, and it's this sort of like tongue-in-cheek stuff, and like there's this element of like characters dying so that at the end you can do this thing where ghosts try to steal your body. It makes a lot more sense if you've played the game. That is not the only trivia game on the Jackbox Party Pack, but it's the only one we play because the alternative is a game called You Don't Know Jack, the naming game of the whole like collection.
Fibbage is kind of trivia as well.
It's trivia that the game explicitly expects you
Not to know the answers,
Yeah.
but just saying.
I think that Jackbox sucks. No, Jack, you don't know Jack sucks.
Hot take.
I think this game sucks. Next time, I think that You Don't Know Jack is bad because the game is based on the like Buffalo Wild Wings trivia system, where the more time you spend answering the question, the less points you get for it. And because of that, you end up with a situation where often, if you are unsure about a question, it is better not to think about it at all and just go with whatever your gut says, which I feel like takes away from like the idea of what trivia even is. It's just like word association. And I don't know, it makes it less satisfying because it doesn't really say that you knew anything, and I could just as easily guess as I could get it right if I'm not allowed time to like assure myself of the correct answer.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, kind of back to JJ's point, is that there can be a certain level of a skill that you develop in doing trivia. if you're given choices, then you can logic your way to the answer, even if you didn't know the answer ahead of time, but you're able to do process of elimination, which is a kind of a skill you can hone and get better at and use. And then also, in kind of the opposite of that, you don't know Jack format, where it's timed, and you just take a wild guess, and probably will be better off than if you did take the time to logic it, doesn't help with that kind of thing. Like, that kind of trivia very much is what JJ was talking about, where I do think that if you do have time to discuss or to think about it, you can logic your way to the answer, even if you didn't have that foreknowledge about that specific topic or that specific idea.
All right, I've got a hot take in response to that discussion then. I think that version of trivia that you're describing, the trivia where time does not have an increased point value, and you're given as much time as you want to consider the answers, I think in that case, trivia is strictly worse than riddles.
No, I think
That is a hot take. Hey, I don't want to breeze past the spiciness of that take.
I mean,
I think
riddles are
that
good.
you're right
That's my
in
take.
your description of trivia. But like, to me, I think that trivia is almost kind of like, you're right, you don't do anything in the moment. There's nothing in the moment you can really do unless, like Janelle says, you have choices, then you can kind of logic your way to the right answer if you're clever about it. But you don't really have choices in the moment if you don't have multiple choice. It's kind of like a culmination of like your life experiences and knowledge up to that point. It's like your agency in trivia is all taking place outside of the trivia. It's like all the stuff you've accumulated in like your brain, your well of knowledge.
Life is training for trivia.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, and it's like trivia is like a kind of thing where you get to like test what you know in like a really general sense, and like maybe you'll get lucky and they'll ask about stuff that you know about, and then you get to feel really awesome. Like it, you have to be like, if
Have
to
you
be
seen
somebody that
Slumdog
really,
Millionaire?
Yeah,
I just keep thinking like trivia is like the liberation rights of human beings.
Uh.
Like when people don't know this, but after you die, your afterlife situation is determined
By
on
what you
how
learned
well
in
you
reality,
do
yeah.
in trivia.
but
And
like,
oh man, I know I'm not getting into sports heaven. I always fuck this up.
But yeah, like to be somebody that like really is really good at trivia and like loves it, and like somebody that be on Jeopardy, you do have to devote a lot of time to it. But like I think to the average person, the like of trivia is way more casual and like, you know, like case by case, like how much fun you have at it.
Okay.
So
Here's a dumb follow-up question then. Is how if you're going to be the person who trains at Jeopardy.
Mhm.
I am.
I
Okay,
did.
good to know.
He's bought all the books.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I did.
What?
I tried
Okay.
out for Jeopardy.
Well,
yeah.
it speaks.
By how do you decide what to research? Is there like a category of questions that is generally understood as trivia questions? 'Cause
Yeah.
it seems like there's just like the sum total of all human knowledge out there.
Yeah,
That's a good
Big and
start.
vast and intimidating.
The encyclopedia of
The
infinite knowledge.
exactly, yeah.
Correct. And I have no idea how you select what you begin to understand for the purposes of truly generalized trivia.
Well,
How did you do it, Janelle?
Well, there's going to be classic literature, American and English for sure. There's
Okay.
usually, well, there's going to be pop culture of some kind. Sometimes there'll be like a decade specific, or maybe a more modern one. Music is just good to know, broad strokes. Potent potables is always a possibility. That is a recurring category.
There's usually some dumb wordplay category.
There's always a word,
The
like, so
worst
you
category.
have to, yeah, you know that there's going to be something coming where it's going to be two words that answer the question that both begin with the letter C. And so they're going to give you this kind of obtuse question that in the moment you didn't know going in necessarily, but you have to know that the answer is Cheshire cheese or whatever by figuring it out on the fly.
It seems pretty bougie. It seems like a pretty bougie social construct that we've developed as the boundaries to what constitutes trivia
If you're
knowledge.
suggesting that Jeopardy is like a little stuffy and elitist, I think that's outrageous.
It is trivia
think
for
That's
the
your hottest take of the evening.
I think we as the proletariat need to overthrow Alex Trebek and create our own trivia.
But
or do trivia where
I love this.
all the questions are really easy and you get them all right.
Yeah, everyone wins.
Hashtag Cookie
quality of
Masterson
outcome
to
is
replace
important.
Alex Trebek.
Well, no, there are definitely difficult non-bougie trivia questions, and I love the idea that now that we've identified,
You
this
could have like
that
some
we just
obscure Cardi B trivia, I guess.
correct. Yes, you could pick.
I mean,
very
and-
obscure.
all Cardi B
Really
trivia is
difficult.
obscure to me. So
This is the fundamental question that I always have with trivia.
yeah.
But yeah, you can
So
create a version of trivia that's very, very obscure about topics that are not traditional trivia topics.
well, to bring it back to like the game, and maybe put a cap on trivia as a thing. Like, what does Trivia Murder?
We're ending trivia.
What does Trivia Murder Party do with trivia that's unique that makes it a better party game than just playing Trivia Pursuit? Because I think if you walked into a room at an average, like, I don't know, office party or just like adults hanging out, drinking something, and you were like, oh, let's play Trivia Pursuit. Most people would be like, fuck that. I hate Trivia Pursuit. It's way too hard. Nobody knows these answers, and if you do, you're an asshole and I hate you. It's probably going to be the answer you're going to get. But Trivia Murder Party,
yes.
What does it do, or at least try to do, to make itself more like accessible?
I think a lot of it's the presentation. Each round, you have the potential to get killed if you get the question wrong, and it will often pit you against each other in these little like mini games or like head games with the player, like put the poison on the chalice and then one person has to drink out of one of them, or like cut off a finger and then whichever number 1 through 4 it corresponds to, you can't answer that question anymore. And answer math questions. Like, it's just like these random little games that you play in between rounds, I think add a lot. And the theming, as I was getting at, like of the murder party aspect, where like the players die as it goes along, like it raises the stakes, and it makes the game shorter on average than like, just playing Trivial Pursuit. It's a lot of weight is put on that presentation, and I do think overall the trivia is a little bit more like stuff the average person would know without being too dumbed down. Like I think it strikes a really good balance.
And presumably the reason the presentation is valuable is, at least from my perspective, because it's also kind of making fun of the Trivial Pursuit-esque normal context of trivia, where
A little bit.
immediate discussion of murder and dismemberment as like part of the trivia activity has like a humorous contrast.
I'm so
there.
elitist that if I know the answer, I'll murder you for not knowing it.
I can actually, in my mind, it seems like a natural progression, right? Because like when you imagine the people who, let's not say play Trivial Pursuit, because everybody has like played Trivial Pursuit.
I have never played Trivial Pursuit.
I
Well,
feel like
alright, we'll
I
do that
only
at some
have like
point.
maybe once.
Either way, imagine instead, dear listener, the people who invented Trivial Pursuit. And what you're imagining, I'm sure, is people in like with a
Aristocratic.
big fireplace in the background. Everybody's wearing like smoking jackets and smoking a pipe. Has some expensive champagne.
The coolest
That kind of shit.
bookshelves.
The coolest people. Those people are also those
Murderers.
They're murderers. No, of the lower class. Start a revolution. This guy's got to stop.
For the people who aren't viewing this video, Daniel just put on his smoking jacket.
Yes.
In front of his bookshelf.
Yeah. Those same people are also the people who popularized the murder mystery genre.
Murder Mystery Party is not a game in which you're trying to figure out who done it. It's
Oh
very
no!
clear.
He comes out right at the beginning and says,
it's the-
"I'm going to kill you."
It's the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, it.
No, it's not.
I mean, it's the
Yeah, you
The
guys
thing-
are way
the
off base. Like,
chalice and all that.
it's
shit.
not like
it's
masterpiece
borrowing-
theater. It's like the Poughkeepsie tapes.
Yeah, it's like a
It's-
basement full of blood.
I
and
mean,
fingers
it's borrowing the idea.
of murder.
Yes.
From Kane.
Like,
I
it's
was
draw-
making a
it's-
joke
it's
the
draw-
whole time.
I think it's draw. I think you're right. Though. I think
Yeah.
it draws a line between the two things. It's not like direct.
Yeah, it's like
But,
your
like,
Trivial
those-
Pursuit.
The two things go together because of.
Right.
If
And in a similar manner, like, you know, the Trivial Pursuit is way too hard, I think, for the majority of people, and Trivia Murder Party is more in line with people who would watch schlocky, stabby, found footage horror movies like us.
I think one thing we can all agree on is that Chad and Andy's comparison is wrong. And the second point I want to make is that Andy said the interstitial mini games were a big part of what makes it better than just like stock standard trivia. I think that's 100% right. And the like magic trick that Trivia Murder Party does is it comes up with a mechanic set that makes you root for the other players, not to like necessarily do better than you, but to still like succeed in the game. Because if everybody dies, then the game ends. Like, you have to progress to a certain point in the game where if everyone but one person dies, you'll still like progress to the end game where you all get to race. And because in the final part of the game, every player has a chance to win still, even if you're way behind because you didn't perform well during the game. Like, that's a reason to want the other players to like succeed on some level. So like, I think that's a really good part of its design. I think it really sucks when the game just ends outright. Like, that stinks and is no fun. So it's not like a perfect design, but it is really interesting that it, like, in a zero-sum game, they found a way to like have other players not want all of the other competitors to just fail at the game.
Yeah, and in the race to the finish part, you have to answer 3 questions each round, so there's like a margin for error. Like, you don't have to know all the answers, and you can still win. So I think that also adds to it.
But Janelle,
Even
knowing
if
all the
Janelle
answers
just
really
wins
helps,
every
yeah.
time anyway.
Yeah, but Janelle always wins. So,
I'm
do we
sorry
want to
that I'm
talk
just
more?
like so
You only
smart and
have
full
to
of
know
knowledge
some-
and better than everyone else.
Yeah.
You only have to know a certain subset of information in order to finish in second place.
Yeah. Do we want to talk more about aesthetics and presentation in the various Jackbox Party Pack games
After
Sounds
I
the
was
like
like,
you
hard
do.
pressed.
after the break?
Is it that time already?
We've been going for like an hour.
After the break.
I thought that was a clear alley-oop. Daniel picked up on
I
it.
also picked up on it. That was you really just
You're
slapped that
fired from the
basketball right
podcast,
down on the floor.
That basketball hit you in the face.
There it
It
is.
was
Yeah, I
a
got it.
flagrant foul.
A fragrant foul?
it's a
It's
fragrant
a-
foul.
Yeah,
It stinks.
you get to do a penalty kick, right?
Yeah, in basketball.
You
yes.
kick them in the shins, the most vulnerable part of a basketball player.
Penalty player kick, where you just pick the guy you don't like and just kick him in the face.
You're definitely not getting into sports heaven because you're really sinning at knowing basketball knowledge while the NBA
Yeah.
finals are being played as we speak.
Oh wow!
Join us next April 1st for our episode on basketball.
God, one day, please.
Yeah, it tipped off 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Well,
Dude, can that be the thing that we do after we all get swole on Ring Fit Adventure?
just play basketball.
Play basketball.
like seamlessly transition.
Be normal
Into a
people.
sports.
The episode on basketball should just be us playing basketball. Like, get some GoPros.
You just want to beat
Yeah,
everybody in basketball.
We just set up a
I do.
camera like off on the side of the court, and then it's just a video of us playing basketball.
Is that a thing people do who play basketball? Do they put GoPros on their heads?
After the break. Welcome back. We have talked about,
Trivia.
yeah, mostly,
Hitting on
and
it.
also some of the ideas behind the designs of the games and them being used as a like social construct before, where do we want to go from here? Because there are a number of games we haven't talked about yet. I think standouts in my mind include any of them that involve drawing. I think that's kind of a deep well that we could mine still.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about like the presentation of all the games.
Mm.
A lot of them have like a defined host. A lot of them have like their own catchy music that plays like in interludes that we all know. And yeah, there's like a personality and an aesthetic, like Fibbage and Quiplash, and like you have like the chameleon that comes in for like the second round of Fibbage or whatever.
Right.
And the fact that I know that speaks to like the strength of the presentation. I just think that adds a lot to these games. I don't know if anybody else has any strong feelings on that.
I think there's a level of presentation here that is appreciable, but I don't think makes or breaks any of the games. Like, I want to say that I do like most of it, but it's often disconnected enough that the games that I like, I don't associate with the aesthetic. And the games where it's really tied to it, like Survive the Internet, is like set on a browser, is like your whole like screen, is cool, and I'm glad it's there, but the game itself is good enough that if they had pulled back on some of the presentation, I wouldn't be upset about it.
See, I kind of feel the opposite, whereas like the ones that I really like, I think are all the ones that have the best presentation.
Okay.
I don't think it's because of that specifically, but I think that adds a significant amount personally.
Yeah, I like that there's sort of camp elements to a lot of the games. Like with the Trivia Murder Party, the fact that a man is ostensibly keeping you hostage and then asks you in a deep, gravelly voice, how many stomachs does a cow have? And then, like, if you get it wrong, you're supposed to chop off your finger. Like, I love that kind of disconnect. And then it's in maybe one of the Fibbage games, there's always, like, a Slavic question break. Not always, but periodically. Like, they'll just have that insert. And then there's, like, the eyeball theming. Or, like, the 70s or 60s aesthetic. Like, I think that's a fun visual element that is, again, maybe you don't need it, but I think that it does add enjoyment for my enjoyment levels to the game.
I think that their design is, it tends to be quite strong across the board. It's certainly not the case that, like, every game has, like, a solid visual design, I think. But what's interesting to me is that they don't really have, like, a consistent style. Like, I don't know if you could play one of these games and be like, oh, like, that's a Jackbox game because, like, I recognize this art style or, like, this design style. But their design is, like, it's very tight and polished. Like, the sort of gratuitous elements, like the funny, like, little quips or, like, the little breaks in Fibbage, they know how to design that stuff to, like, get out of your way, so it doesn't feel like, oh, like, okay, let's waste some time with this. Like, it's very quick hitting, which I think is good. Like, they definitely know how to design for these types of games, and like that probably is the thing that stands out the best or the most to me.
Yeah, I think they ride the line like just right, because like we all know Cookie Masterson, the host of Fibbage and a couple of the other games.
Schmitty.
And Schmitty.
Yeah.
Schmitty's a lot worse, in my opinion. But like
Drag
we all
Schmitty,
like
jeez.
we all know Cookie, and we all both love and hate him at the same time. And I think that's exactly what you want. Like, you want something that is surprisingly funny sometimes, and then also kind of like annoying and like facepalmy sometimes. Like, it just fits. Like, I feel like that's the kind of tone these are going for. Like, they're like Janelle said, campy, and like kind of like almost a little bit like outdated in some ways, but like it's also endearing. Like, I don't know. I feel like they ride a line that's really appealing. And like I say, it's so memorable. Like, we reference Cookie Masterson somewhat regularly. And I think that says a lot.
Interestingly, not anything that he ever said.
No,
he
just
referenced
him.
just Cookie Masterson as a concept.
It's just such
Well,
a
the
good
name
name.
is very good. Yeah.
But when it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because it's
Yeah, it's
gone and
fleeting.
out of your brain in like a half second. And that's
Yeah,
what I
it's not
like
an-
about their design choices is like if he did like a 15-second joke, it would be torture if it wasn't funny. And like they do a good job of like designing it so that like some of the stuff's not funny, you don't even care because you don't think about it, which is like
Yeah.
not easy to do, I think.
Yeah, it's not intrusive. Like there aren't like horrible, like really long tutorials where he's trying a bunch of jokes and it's horrible and awful.
Yeah, most they're tutorializing. I mean, that's more of a hallmark of the game design than it is about the presentation. But the tutorials of these games tend to be very short and easy to explain, and that is like what makes a party game work. Like when you have people over and they're drunk and you sit them down, the reason that you're going to reach for shitty ass Cards Against Humanity as opposed to like Settlers of Catan is because you don't want to spend 20 minutes explaining to somebody how to play the game that you're about to play. The fact that these can be like, there's going to be a prompt and then you pick 2 noises, go, is a great like a little tiny explanation that's pretty clear, and they're the kind of games that you kind of figure out as you play them. And so that's more on, I think, the design than it is on the presentation. But I agree that not having a 20-second tutorial is a good thing when you can just do it in 5 seconds.
Is there a single example that any of us can think of a game with an extremely high setup cost? That is a game that either literally takes a lot of time to set up physically or requires knowledge of a lot of different complex rules and tasks, that is designed to be funny?
Mousetrap.
I was gonna say Mousetrap. I can't believe that you said that.
I think
Good job,
everyone
good
was
job.
was gravitating toward Mousetrap as soon as he said a game that takes a long time to set up.
Yeah, it has a lot of parts.
Because Mousetrap is a catastrophe of a game from a design perspective, because they basically intend for the player of the game to have a degree in architecture.
Sidebar. Mousetrap was always one of those things I'd see commercials for as a kid that I always wanted and was never allowed to have, and you guys had in your basement.
We did have.
Yeah, we had.
Daniel and
Honestly,
Steven.
we had it, and I didn't even really care.
I don't think we ever even
Yeah,
played
like I remember, like making a beeline for that when I went over to your house. I was like, I gotta play with Mousetrap.
I think we had 3 or 4 copies of Mousetrap,
it.
actually.
Yeah, I know, right?
You probably did.
Did I ever tell you
Your
guys my
parents just
Mousetrap
forgot they
story?
bought it for you.
Your Mousetrap story?
Yes, my childhood history with the game Mousetrap.
No.
Oh,
Please.
It's a very simple and quick story. But I got it as a Christmas gift because, like Andy, I saw the commercials for it and was like, "Oh, it's
So
the
tantalized.
parts move in a way that is unpredictable."
It's a Rube Goldberg machine for kids.
It is,
Yeah,
yes.
like-
And I was really attached to it, and I got it, and I was devastated because it was missing a piece. So I went back to Toys R Us, like after Christmas, and all the stores were open again. I got a new one. I opened it up; it was missing a different piece, and the cycle repeated 3 times until we just gave up, and they got me a different tip.
You should have just kept the old one so you had all the pieces.
Well,
Buy
I had
2
to
copies of
return them.
Mousetrap?
Yeah.
After you think how many times after like 3 times when it's been missing a piece, do you think that the adult play would have been like, "Oh, let's just buy one and invest more money in
What
Mousetrap."
happened here
When it
is
happened
that
the second time, that should have been when you say, okay, we'll buy another one and combine the pieces. Odds are we'll have them all.
double
Oh, I
Mousetrap.
see your strategy now.
Yeah.
Okay, so they wanted to go double or nothing on
Yeah,
Mousetrap.
double or
compatibility.
nothing on Mousetrap.
What happened in this situation is someone bought a copy of Mousetrap. It was missing a single piece. So they bought a second copy of Mousetrap, took the piece out,
And then returned
that
it.
version.
Oh.
And you kept buying the returned copies of Mousetrap.
Honestly, like, you're probably right.
I was the Mousetrap sap in
Yeah.
the complex
The mouse-
Mousetrap plan.
The Mousetrap Sap. Directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
All right. Jackbox is a game developed in 2014.
That is unlike Mousetrap in an infinite number of ways.
And the reason we started talking about Mousetrap is because this conversation has started forming in my mind, like, the full curve of amount of time that you have to invest in the game on one axis, and presumably like the amount of enjoyment you get out of the experience.
Yeah,
on
what's
the other.
what's the fun factor?
The fun factor.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you found a succinct Twitter hashtag ready version of that question. But yeah, and I was just curious because in theory, like, there's no reason, at least that it hits me in the face immediately. Then you guys can call me on that if it's not true, for why you couldn't have different types of enjoyment at high setup costs. But it seems like almost every single time you have the high setup cost, there's an expectation that it has to be this like serious endeavor in one way or the other.
Well, I want to provide a counter argument, right?
Okay.
But I know from experience that everyone on this call disagrees with me. And that is, there is a game in Jackbox Party Pack, I want to say 3, called Bidiots that we've already mentioned. That is...
I feel like Bidiots is in 5.
No, because we played it the last time we played. We only played the first 3 games.
I don't think that's right.
That is
Who
true.
cares?
Yeah, it
They're
doesn't
all
matter.
meshed
Yeah,
together in a
irrelevant.
big salad.
Yeah. But I hate that game. And everyone else thought it was like, okay, at least. And the problem is the game has a ton of setup and a ton of, like, process to it.
Mhm.
So you have to draw pictures first. Then you have to bid on the pictures. And then you have a total amount of money that you could spend in it.
Unless you
And
take
then,
a
as you
predatory
spend-
loan.
Yes, and then you take out a predatory loan in order to pay for additional paintings. And the goal is to buy the paintings based on descriptions that you're given on your phone of paintings that are worth a lot of money, to end up with the highest score at the end of the game. So there's a lot of strategy to it. There's a lot of sort of like understanding of the process. Like, you have to be able to get how to work at an auction in order to play the game. And the game's tutorial in no way sets that up as a thing. One of the secret hidden mechanics of the game that I was unfamiliar with is that a bunch of the drawing prompts are set up to produce similar looking images, so that you can like identify which image is which and then go from there. And I feel like that game has a ton of setup time and is also very bad. And I think it's a direct result of it. Like, I think that if it was a simpler concept, like one of the two things, either drawing pictures and trying to identify them, which is just drawful,
Mm-hmm.
or the bidding thing, but with preset images, I feel like it would be easier to grasp and therefore more enjoyable for
Yeah.
a group.
I think it could easily be boiled down to like a familiarity thing. Like, if we played it a few times and just internalized the rules, it'd probably be a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, that's the whole point of the question, the setup time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not all.
I think it's like a cost you have to pay. Like, you have to be able to get into the game so much before it's good,
Right.
and that's usually a sign of bad design.
Yeah,
But what were you gonna say, Steven?
I was just gonna say, like, so in the Jackbox Party Pack, you're getting 4 or 5 games in the pack, so they don't all have to hit the same way. And I actually probably like that you get a little variety there, where you have your Quiplash or your Fibbage that you can show to anybody who's never seen it before. They need no tutorial; they can jump right in and play, and it's a great party game in that way. And that you look at other games that take a little bit more of that setup. Aren't necessarily bad. They maybe just something that doesn't ring a bell with you, but like, it's something that we could play again and have a really good time with. Because I think most of us, once we got it figured out, were enjoying it, but it did feel like it ran a little long. But I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if we went back to that game and played it and had a good time. So if you're playing with a regular group, like we do, then it's something that could come back. So the way that Party Pack is set up, it could be good to have 2 out of the 5 games are no tutorial necessary. Show it to somebody and they're good to go. You have one that takes maybe some setup time and a little bit more work. Then you have your art game, which everybody's going to suck at drawing. Like, having that variety in the pack makes a lot of sense.
I will go ahead and say we're not, nor should we, ever return to Zeeple Dome.
We did play that only once.
I don't think I ever
and
played
it-
that one.
You don't need to.
Yeah, you can skip
Yeah,
Zeeple
I
Dome.
thought you were there, but that doesn't matter. It sucked.
One thing I wanted
Okay.
to... No. Go ahead, JD.
Let's mind this. Why did Zeeple Dome suck?
Because it was like it was trying to be like an indie Flash game. Like it was like a weird 2D for like side scrolly type perspective, like the side on view of the action. And like I don't even fucking remember what happened, and I think that's the problem. It's like it's super like ill-defined, I think.
There's definitely a comparison, but I can't think of like a specific name. But the concept of it is everyone's phone has like a slingshot on it, and you like shoot things at an angle, and you're supposed to match it up with what's on the screen to accomplish. It's an action game. Like it's not a.
It's like Angry Birds crossed with something else.
Yeah.
Like what's the one with the stick figures? Like
A-
never
a
mind.
lot of
It doesn't
them.
matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
But the reason that it's bad is because it is not what you go to the game for. Like, I could see this being released as like a prototype type game where they're like, we tried to do an asymmetric multiplayer action game that everyone plays individually on their phones while interfacing with our server, which then displays what's happening on the screen. But because of all of the levels of disconnect, it doesn't function because you can't react to things anywhere close
Yep.
to the amount that you need to.
It feels like an experimental indie game that they just bought and slapped in the pack
Right.
to fill out the roster.
The pack only needed Madverse City, the best game that nobody
The
likes.
game that I'm
playing.
incapable of playing.
Yes.
I assume it's like a rap game.
It's
It
a
is.
rap game.
I
Oh,
think
God.
Mad First City. We keep coming back to Apples and Cards Against Humanity. Like that was my problem with Madverse City is, and it's a personal thing. It's me. It's not the game. Mostly, I think is like I would put together something I thought was like really good, and like no one would vote for it. Like that was like every time with that game for me, and it made me sour towards it. But I think the game is good.
I'm a lyrical genius.
I
Chad
already
is
knew this, yeah.
it spits mad rhymes.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask about earlier was most of us have expressed like some kind of personal preference vis-a-vis the Jackbox games, and one that I am aware of, but like we've never actually like fully explored that much, is it seems like, Andrew, you don't really like the drawing games, and like I'm curious to know why. I know, like, obviously you are way more talented at drawing, like, than any of us. And so, like, that's always struck me as, like, the root reason. But I would love to hear your thoughts about, the art-based games.
Yeah, I mean, it is that, and it's just like me being petty.
He
because
hates to stoop to our level.
no, it's not that. It's
He has
just
to
like
look at our
I.
very bad drawings.
yeah, it's because you guys sicken me.
You should draw the
Um,
episode art in, like, the in-game
Ooh.
drawing
On a
thing.
phone.
That is tempting, actually. I'll look into it. I could probably emulate that with the Photoshop brush, like a big fat one. But so the thing is that like I'm decent at drawing. I don't like to toot my own horn. I don't like to call myself an artist, but like I'm good at drawing. I will say it.
In the
and
edit, I will put
I'm the
horn-
best and the greatest, and I draw with the best of them.
I
No,
will,
but,
I will insert a horn sound effect
Yes,
of
I'm
a
gonna,
horn being tooted
and I'll
here.
toot it.
Yeah.
But no, like, and then it's frustrating, I guess, to do something that you're good at with a huge handicap, like having to draw on your little phone screen with your big fat finger, and
Yeah.
like knowing you could do so much better if you had like a better interface or like anything to work with is frustrating. Like you get a prompt and you're like, you know, you watch shows like gonna plug some shows here like
Rick and Morty.
yeah, like Rick and Morty. No, what's the Drawfee?
Oh, drop it, yeah.
yeah.
We all watch that. And they take prompts, like things that people comment, and they're like, and they draw a nice drawing, and they take like 20 minutes to do it, and and that's my headspace. Like when I get a prompt, I'm like, oh, I could think of something good I could do with this, and and then but like I have to do it in like 20 seconds, like with my
Right.
finger on a little phone screen, and it's like it's frustrating to me, like to have to crunch to do that, but like that's also part of the fun. is like it's putting pressure on you. You have to crunch and like do the best you can with shitty tools, and like that's the point. It's just like if I'm in the wrong mood, I'm like, fuck
Well, it's
this
also
game.
an equal. It's also an
like, and sometimes the
equalizer.
prompts are shitty. Like I remember one time I had to do like unicorn war or something, and like I just drew like a shitty unicorn on each side with a machine gun.
Right.
This was the best I could think of, and then somebody got pissed because they thought it was one thing, and it's just like you get drinking and you play these games and you know, there's a lot of, it's a whole cocktail of issues, but like sometimes the drawing games land real bad for me.
Well, I was just gonna say that the drawing interface is also like an equalizer, because
Yeah.
if the game was like, oh, we all have a tablet and a stylus in Photoshop, and like all of Andy's drawings would come up, and we would be like, oh, that's the one that Andrew drew.
And mine would look
Oh, of
just
course,
as
that's
bad as
Unicorn
they did.
War.
Yeah, like the game design is sound. It's just like being good at a thing and then having to be
Yeah.
handicapped with it is frustrating.
That
Andy,
makes sense. I can see
like
that.
Andy
Lucifer has fallen from so much of a greater height than the
Yes.
rest of us that his pain is magnified in the greatest of us all.
If anything, the phone screen has made my drawings better
Yeah, I mean,
than what they normally are.
I did draw that one drawing that's on the T-shirt that you bought.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah,
Which I thought I got out, but now I think I put it back in the drawer.
that's all right. We're not gonna.
Yeah.
I'm not capturing the video. I decided against.
You should
it.
capture that image of that shirt and put it
Put it on
somewhere.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Fair. That is a great feature, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of the reason that I think, hard call, TKO is I think my favorite of all the Jackbox games.
It's top tier.
Yeah,
It's a very
it,
good
it,
game.
it combines the like forced equalizing hilarity of terrible drawings with the kind of surrealist humor that I like. I don't know. I feel like being forced and having an incentive in the game to come up with like as many 1 second 3-word phrases that you can possibly string together is really up my alley, and is the kind of like bonkers off the wall diversity that having all of these rapidly iterated 5-packs allowed.
Mhm.
And I assume was also pushed through because it allowed them to do crazy markups on T-shirts
To monetize.
as a different revenue scheme, one that I wholly support because those shirts are awesome, and I regret every day not buying teeth, burn it all down. the rest of my life.
See, I don't even remember that shirt.
This is why you need a
Yeah.
physical memento.
Yeah,
See,
even
I
more evidence that
wanted,
you
I
should have bought
wanted.
it.
There is no God here to see.
See?
Daisy on
That
a
was a
hill.
classic.
Yeah.
That's a great shirt.
We can't forget sloppy tits.
No, yeah,
Oh.
nobody can.
I had forgotten sloppy tits.
What's interesting
Yeah,
about
bring it
that?
back.
What's interesting about TKO is that, like, and I hadn't even really appreciated it until just now, is it's not a competitive game. Like, does anyone even win that game? I don't think so.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a winner.
They
There's a
do
winning
give
shirt.
winner.
But is there a winning player?
Yeah, the
There's-
person
Yeah.
who put the shirt
Whoever
together,
made
You
and
get-
the person
yeah.
who did the slogan, and the person who did the drawing also get kudos. But
Right.
We just
It
never
seems-
feel like it's like that because
Yeah,
we all
it's not
have
really
a hand in it.
competitive.
The points are spread around
Yeah,
because in
it's
order for
most-
the person to get the winning shirt, someone had to draw the drawing and someone had to write the slogan, and those
Right.
people also get points.
And
when you
the
vote
points
on
get tallied
shirts-
for the votes, so like if you win in a competition between two shirts, then that those people get points and the other people do not. So there's actually a pretty wide like variety of ways to accrue points in the game,
Mhm.
but it is the most successful one at making that not the focus.
Yeah, there is a winner, but like you don't. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not the
No one
focus.
cares.
You don't even think about.
I
it.
don't even remember us ever, like, taking notice of who won. I like, as a fairly competitive person, I've never even cared about winning TKO. And, like, when you vote on shirts, you can vote for your own shirt, which is, like, might seem a little weird. Like, you can vote for it every time. And yet, like, when I've played and, like, put together a shirt, I have never once voted for mine unless I thought it was, like,
Yeah.
the funniest, right?
Exactly.
Like, I've never, like,
So
well,
every
this is, you know,
single time.
yeah, like, this is mine and I'll get points. Well, it usually is the funniest, but that's, like, a separate question. But, like, objectively, you should vote for yours every time, because, like, you'll get some points even if it doesn't win. But, like, that's never how I've played the game. And, like, I'm a pretty sort of straightforwardly competitive person, so, like, I think that's a sign of a good, if not good, at least very interesting game design, that, like, you don't play to win that game. Like you play to have
Yeah.
fun in that game, which is
Yeah.
cool.
It
You,
creates
you
an
play to make merchandise.
Yeah, it creates it creates an environment, where you want to pick the funniest thing, regardless of whether or not it's yours. Like,
Yeah.
you like respect the other person's like ability to put together a funnier thing than you. Like, yeah, like it is hard to kind of quantify, but like it does create a scenario where like it almost feels like a collaborative effort to make the funniest shirt.
Yeah, to keep the Cards Against Humanity comparisons rolling. It's like if someone wrote their own custom cards and then handed it to their friends and then used that as the deck.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, suck it, Cards Against Humanity, I think is what we're trying to say.
I agree.
I want to talk about, because we're coming off of TKO and we're still in the realm of the drawing games, why I personally love the actual gameplay of Drawful as, like, I think the best, like, pure drawing game.
It's like the simplest, most focused drawing game.
Yeah, and the concept of picking a title for the piece is really, like, the most like the other Jackbox games that I like, where you're given something often unbelievably ridiculous, like almost indecipherable, and then you have to just title it. And seeing the things that people come up with, like if they're elements people latch onto, like what was the last time we played, somebody had a drawing that was like everyone identified as being like a happy chimney or a mushroom, and it was not
Lindsay's.
that at all.
Wasn't it Lindsay's?
It was.
I would think it was Lindsay's
Yeah, I
drawing.
don't remember.
It was like
Yeah.
it was her like morning commute, and she had drawn like coffee
yeah.
in front of
Right.
her.
Yeah.
When it came up,
yeah,
I was
it-
like, "Oh, this is such a cute friend," and then the picture was like, "Not." We
But
were
it looked
so
like
far
her.
off.
Yeah.
I put something like happy mushroom like speeding by or like something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Like, it just the fact that it was just like we had all like individually latched onto parts of the drawing that were not part of the original prompt in any way, and like you get to see this like spread of how the interpretations like were taken. It just, as somebody who's bad at drawing, I feel like I'm like the target demographic for this, because like it's always the most amusing when the people just don't get it, and I love that.
yeah, and like the time for someone who is good at drawing, like the time limit
case
is
you
the
forgot.
fun part. Yeah, in case you forgot, I'm the best and I draw so good. Like the time limit is the part that like I find the most fun, is that like you have to like, there are like videos of like people who will be like, I'm going to draw Spider-Man in 5 seconds. I'm going to draw Spider-Man in 1 minute. And I'm going to draw Spider-Man in 5 minutes. And like you get to look at like the 5-second drawing and it's all sped up and it's like, and it's just like a shitty Spider-Man. And it's really funny. Like that's this game basically. It's like you have to like scramble to render your prompt, and like it creates its own chaotic, funny drawing in the process because of the time limit. And it's always, it's just when I'm not frustrated by how it's limiting me, it is really funny. In the appeal for me. It's a fun challenge.
You're so sexy and hot. Andy.
I am the best around.
So we've
Nothing's
talked about
gonna
the
ever keep him down.
yes, we've talked about the trivia games and the quip and the like quippy funny the quip and flip games and the drawing games. Like they're still like the other games that don't necessarily fit into those things. Like Monster Seeking Monster is one I want to make sure we bring up and or talk about.
Yeah, because I'm the only one that likes that game.
I always say that I like this game. It's just that we're shouted down.
So let's talk about that game.
Monster Seeking
Let's talk
Monster.
about
That's the one.
how weird it is to be sexting with your brother, because that's what Monster Seeking Monster is, and that's why I don't like it.
Surprisingly, the second time tonight that we're talking about maybe sexual relationships with immediate family members. But yeah, that game is I play that game with two of the people being blood relatives, which is why I don't have that much fun playing it.
Yeah. I can see where it would be a great party game. Like that's the party game like I should have brought to my random like friends party who they're not as funny as us or as smart. But man, they've probably done a lot of
It's getting
online
harsher as the
dating.
night goes on.
Yeah.
It does,
Yeah, like for me, like no one in our group of friends is my brother, so that helps. But for me, the fun of Monster Seeking Monster is that like I was never somebody who got like into theater or anything, but I've always really liked theater, and it's really kind of tickles my like improv bone. Like something about Monster Seeking Monster, I really get into like the inhabiting, like the messaging somebody and trying to like get them to like I often don't even focus on like my secret goal.
Right.
And like I just try to get as many people as I can to what's even your goal in the game? It's been
Okay,
a long
so
time since we played
Get a lot
it.
of
You try to
everyone-
get them to
Everyone is a monster of some kind. You might be a ghost or a vampire, whatever. And so, whatever your secret identity is, whether you are the vampire, for example, it might be to get as many different people to go out with you. Or if you're the ghost, it might be to specifically date a certain, like, only date the Frankenstein's monster or something like that. Like, you have a secret goal that the other players don't know. And so your mission is to achieve your goal while also foiling other people's goals. Meanwhile, you're not sure who's who and behind the disguise. So
Right.
there's there is like a messaging feature where you get like 5 texts that you can send. And so maybe you want to send all 5 of them to one person and get the focus on them to want to go on a date with you. Or it may make more sense if you need to get as many people to want to date you and reject them, for example, as part of your goal, to like try to get spread the wild oats or whatever, and like send one text to every person and like try to entice them to ask you out. So
No,
there
do
is.
not-
What?
I'm gonna need to focus in on spread the wild oats. Is that?
Well, yeah, it's like, what is it? Your seed, your wild oats. That's all. Fucking.
So you're welcome.
You
So
want to
you
try and
want it.
impregnate as many of the other players.
you
as
yeah, you
possible.
want to have a vampire, werewolf hybrid baby, specifically.
But yeah, so right, the thing you want to do is get dates.
Yes.
Is what I couldn't remember somehow, even though it's
but yeah,
explicitly stated in the
You're
game.
just so excited at the prospect
But-
of sexting all of us.
Yeah, but like
together.
that's the thing. Like I think like I think that as the majority of times we've played, I've been the winner of this game. And once again, I don't like to toot my own horn.
Get
Because
that
you're so
horn sound
sexy
effect
and
ready.
smooth.
but I am the best and the greatest, and
Mhm.
I'm great at drawing, and I'm great at Monster Seeking Monster.
Mhm.
But like I think I found like maybe I found the meta game, but like I think like the thing you want to do in Monster Seeking Monster is just try to have as many successful dates as possible and not worry about your secret goal.
I think, okay, if you've played any other, this falls into a category of things, and we'll talk about one other standout example of this, I'm positive, that I'm just going to call social games. They're games where the goal is to interact with other people and spin it in a favorable way for you, whether that is by deceit or like clever wordplay or whatever.
Mhm.
And so Monster Seeking Monster ends up, due to the secret goals, feeling like the popular, like, what do you call it, like imposter games,
Yeah.
things like Werewolf or Mafia, where you have to identify the people who are,
Fakers.
yeah, or who the person that they are in Monster Seeking Monster's case. My largest problem with Monster Seeking Monster is because the game takes a very long time. It feels like you either get in a situation where you feel like somebody is very clearly going to win, or that you are very clearly going to lose.
It's the Monopoly problem.
Yeah, and once somebody checks out, the entirety of the fun of interacting with them goes away instantaneously. Like, you want to imagine that people will just stay in it till the end because they think they still have a chance, but because of the standings and because of the fact that they reveal who people are as the game goes on, it makes it like really hard to think that you have a shot the further you go into the game. And so I don't know, like, and it just because of how the length of time, like it's hard to maintain enthusiasm for that long.
It is one of the longer games.
But I also hate games like Mafia and Werewolf, and I just don't like playing them. So.
See, I feel like on paper
We'll get
it
to
sounds
that.
like something like where I would agree with you, or it doesn't. It sounds kind of lame, but there's something about it in practice. Like I love this one, and I feel like I like it the most.
Well, you said that it tickles your improv bone.
It does,
And
yeah. Like, I love-
everybody.
You have to text people. Like the way it works is it's broken up into nights, and each night you have to like text the other players and try to get a date with them.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I find that interaction like super fun.
Well-
and one thing that we keep coming back to, as Steven said early on, is like we're a group of people who are really familiar with each other.
Mhm.
So there's plenty of in jokes. Like I know I can like message Dan like as a fallback if I have nothing else that I want to do.
Oh, I'm
Or
glad
just
to know
text
I'm your
him-
fallback.
Yeah, just text him some. Well, I'm just saying, if I don't have any other options, I know I can have a funny interaction with you, like by texting you something only you would get. And you know, like there's just like playing with a close group of friends. Like I have a lot of fun with that. I don't know if other people take that angle when we play, but like I just kind of fuck around.
Right.
And maybe that's the best way to get dates. Maybe I need to apply this logic to my own real life.
Okay, to clarify, you're saying that the way you would apply that to your real life to get dates is to attempt to date us specifically,
Yeah, like-
one at a time.
Do you guys want to go out?
Have you considered me?
Yeah, Steve, like,
Yeah, like,
just
yeah,
if
it's
only
his
they would
fault.
know.
If only I could date my cousin.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the entirety of that setup was literally me just going to say everyone likes to tickle their bones, but not usually in the presence of their own brother. And you went on for 4 minutes.
I like to stroke my own bones.
Yes. So I'm glad that we're here now.
Uh-huh.
The other social game that I do want to talk about in relation to this is Faking It, which is the other.
Oh, I forgot about
Ooh,
faking
love
it.
Faking
Yeah.
It.
Yeah,
game.
I just played, like, we hadn't played it in a really long time, and I played it when I played it with my parents recently.
Mhm.
And I up front, I was like, you don't want to do faces, because faces sucks. But, like, we played it with, like, very few people, so it wasn't as good. It's way better with a bigger group.
Right.
It's way easier to suss out a liar when it's, like, 4 people. But, this game gives me anxiety.
Yeah. And this is the reason that I don't like playing those types of games, is because I am an absurdly nervous liar when there's immediate pressure on me. Like when somebody's like, oh, you didn't do this thing, like you could see the sweat beating on me. Like every victory I've scored in Faking It, because this is the double-edged sword, right, has been a euphoric experience where I feel like I've overcome not only the game and the other players, but my very nature as a human being to be able to not like show a crack in my falsehoods.
Okay, so then would you, Chad, absolutely adore all of these werewolf-style games if there was some mechanic or hypothetical matchmaking system that assured that you were never the liar?
Oh, I thought you were just going to say, would you like to play Among Us? Because it's that game, but you don't have to physically be there.
Oh, I didn't know the physicality if it was the problem with the
That's
lying.
the biggest problem, because it's noticeable when I'm
Okay.
nervous about it.
That's fair.
Yeah, you can't play it over like stream because you have to like point at other people and things.
Yeah.
True.
Part of the charm of it is that, and like the arguably the best moments that come out of this game are like when somebody is caught not just red-handed, but like some kind of even deeper crimson-handed. Like when somebody claimed that they had seen God, what fucking movie was it? Why do I want to say it was The Green Mile or something?
I remember there's one where it was The Walking Dead with me, and it was like, how many seasons of The Walking Dead have you seen?
Right.
And
No, somebody was like, it was like, how many times have you rewatched this movie? And they were like, they held up 10 fingers, which is such a bold move, because it's rarely 10 in the instance where you want to do that. So you have to be like, oh yeah? Like, did you see this movie 10 times?
It was me.
It was you.
What
okay.
what you're leaving out is the premise is that if you are the liar, you're given an unrelated question that everyone else doesn't see. So everyone else got, how many times have you seen the Green Mile? But I got, how many pairs of shoes do you own? So I very confidently held up 10 fingers, because I'm like, well, I have tons of
That's
shoes.
the final
Everyone,
round.
Yeah, that's
Well,
only how
but-
the final round works.
Yeah, but that was it though. You're
Yeah,
right.
oh yeah,
that
it was.
was
I'm
where-
not doubting
yeah.
that. Yeah.
From a game design perspective, one thing I really like Faking It. I feel like maybe I might like it more than I'm definitely on like the higher end of the spectrum of this group in terms of how much I like it. But like, it's interesting that we had to like tweak the design or like the rules of the game to make it playable, because I remember when we played, we like instituted a house rule of nobody says or does anything until everyone reads the prompt on the screen, because
You don't want
when you're the
people-
faker, you don't get the prompt ahead of time, which is why it puts you in a compromising position of like, I've got to point at someone or like raise a number of fingers, and like I don't know what I'm going to be like claiming that supports. But it's like, if you don't have everyone read the prompt in a neutral way up front, it's super obvious who the faker is, because they have to look at the screen and see like what they're supposed to say, and everyone else is
Yeah.
like looking around. So like, it's not bad design, but I think like in a more tightly designed version of the game, they would like actually put that like as a instruction in the game of like, everybody read the prompt before you look around or do anything.
Yeah, because like the first couple times we played, people would get the prompt and they'd be like, "Oh," or they'd have some kind of reaction to it,
Right.
and then like if you were the faker, it just says on your screen like, "Try to blend in."
Yeah.
So like you could fake that if you were the faker, and as soon as it comes up and like you'd be like, "Oh," like you could. It's just, it leads to a lot of like unintentional reactions and people trying to like metagame, well, not necessarily metagame, but like people's just
It's
natural,
like literally the game.
people's
Yeah.
natural responses take over and like give things away almost immediately,
Mhm.
and the game does not call attention to that possibility whatsoever. So yeah, you do have to kind of realize that for yourself.
it feels like I disproportionately get the faker job
I agree.
more than anyone else.
I will agree with this.
Which I'm
Do you
also,
agree?
I would say, out of
Do you agree?
everyone, the best faker. Like, I'm the best. Like, I like.
This is the 2 year
You had the mo-
podcast.
you had the
so-
most-
Well,
Yeah,
I'm,
you had the most
listen,
practice.
If Andy got to be self-masturbatory, give me my 5 seconds of self-masturbatory. But
We already gave that to you when
Yeah, you know
were
all
the
the
queen
trivia.
of trivia
You're
murder
the queen of
party.
trivia.
Yeah, I
let
know
her,
all the
let her do her
trivia.
thing. All right.
which also means I'm a narcissist, and like when everyone else fails, and everyone knowing that I'm very smart and observant and read books. Anyway,
I read books.
yeah. So like, I'll read the phone and see like, you're the faker, try to blend in, but like other people are chuckling, so I'll be like, and like when the time comes, you just have to move like with confidence. And there have been times where I have convinced everyone else that the other person is the faker, and so like, as someone who is anxious approximately 90% of the time, no matter what, always, the fact that I can be given a space to like just boldly and confidently like lie through my teeth, and that there are certain expectations and like a certain amount of anxiety that comes from it, like it is in the space of a game where like I had to lie. I didn't pick this, and so I'm gonna do it the best I fucking can.
It's
Because let's be real, lying to your friends is so fucking fun when you can pull it off successfully. The sense of accomplishment is just incredible. It's great.
it's almost
Yeah,
as
I
though-
always
Sorry,
go ahead, Steven.
I say it's almost as though the game Faking It is like a magic ring that makes whatever you say become a lie.
Also, you can't feel the rings.
Also, you can't fail them. No, I was gonna say that my golden strategy when we play with this group of friends, if I'm the faker, is just to like, in my peripheral vision, watch for what Daniel does, because odds are whatever Daniel puts up is gonna be similar to what I would do. I just revealed my strat.
the sociological similarities.
Yep.
I see.
In defense of revealing your strat, for years I have been telling people when I play rock paper scissors, I always throw scissors, and everyone thinks I'm faking them out, and I still win at rock paper scissors
and you just
at
do
least
it?
a decent amount of the time.
Dude, it's all about head games.
It really is. So now that we know that, we'll try to apply it, and we'll fuck it up, or we'll suspect that you won't do it.
We
this
play
time.
infrequently enough that you won't remember the next time we play.
I'll
That's also
remember.
possible.
But
We've
you now will,
established
because
that my
she is an
brain
she's an
is-
elephant. She never forgets.
We have the best. We have the breast brain over here.
The breast
brain.
brain.
The breast
I have
brain.
breasts on my best brain.
That's how she's so good at Trivia Murder Party.
She's got a brain in each breast.
Exactly.
But
I do. I have 3 brains.
anyway,
I have 4 brains. How many brains do you have? Yeah, that's the prompt. Hold up a number of fingers.
Yeah. No,
But,
I
trivia
can't hold
murder
up
party.
47
How many
fingers.
brains
Yeah.
do you have?
are there any other favorite games anyone wants to call out? You want to talk about earwax, Chad?
Okay, earwax is supremely underappreciated, or I'm the only person on the planet who finds it funny. Because we replayed it, and I think everyone was like, yeah, that was okay.
Oh,
But
I
I
loved
still think the concept of it is just so good.
I'll agree with you. The concept is fantastic, and we keep going back to this well, but like for me, it's a Cards Against Humanity problem where I always feel like I put together a great combination and no one ever picks it.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those games that's super subjective and can go super great or terrible. Like just it's like a flip of a coin whether or not I have fun while playing it.
Okay, but we played it the last time that we played.
Yes,
Who won?
I don't remember.
Exactly.
I'm not competitive,
It doesn't
though.
fucking matter.
I'm not
Does
competitive.
anyone
though.
in the room remember who won that game? I think my point stands.
Then it's been like a month.
It hasn't been a month.
It's been
like,
at least 2 weeks,
feel
which is like a month.
either way.
2
Well,
weeks,
only
similar
because
to a
only
month.
because it's the Toot Your Horn podcast, I can reveal that I remember that I won that game.
But now that he knows nobody else remembers, he can just take credit for it. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
he's
What's
currently
the real
winning
truth?
at
No
both
one knows.
earwax and faking it.
But yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
competitive, so I wouldn't remember either way.
But the point of earwax is simply to just take this. You have a pretty small selection of sound effects that you get given. Like I think you get 4 at a time. I don't think there's more than like 25 or 30 in the entire game, and you get like a prompt to do a thing, and you have to put together 2 sound effects that match the prompt. So I agree that it has the apples to apples problem because it is a judge based game.
Yep, and sometimes it's the Hitler boner thing,
Right.
where it's just like whoever has the funniest sound effect might win.
But I feel like the game being a sound effects game with a prompt means that everyone is going to at least attempt to make it match.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amusing to see how each person interprets the like combination of sounds and like what the person was going for. And because of that, like, I don't know, it's just a really funny game, and I just enjoy the idea of it so much.
I will totally agree we should play it more often. Like, it has a lot of potential.
I think that we should create our own version of the game.
Where will we sample all of these sound effects from?
I just pull from sound libraries.
There are a lot of royalty-free sound effects.
Yeah, the sound effects in the game are all just like the sound of a champagne bottle popping, a man saying yes, like things like that. Like it's very
A machine
simple.
gun going
I played this
off.
game. I do
People
remember.
screaming.
Yeah. I'm just saying. It'd be
Did you
fairly
ever
simple to
did you ever
sample.
have the game Henry as a kid?
That sounds like the most boring thing I've ever heard.
It wasn't.
It sounds creepy. To
It's
me.
a purple. It's like a purple. It's essentially like a square, and it's like a memory game. It has a bunch of sound effects, and you have to like match the sound effects to the different like corresponding. It's like a bunch of
It's
a bunch of
butts.
buttons on it. It's like 20 buttons,
Mhm.
and you have to like match up all the sound effects. I liked it a lot as a kid, but anyway, it's just it is royalty-free sound effects of the game. Is basically why I brought it up. It's like there's a bunch of sound effects on it that I've heard in other media, and it's been weird. I'm like, oh, that's from Henry.
I think the thing that makes it work where Cards Against Humanity kind of obviously fails. We agree it's trash, but like the difference is
Fuck it.
the difference with this game, if my memory serves, is that you can't like hit play and hear what your sound effect is going to exactly sound like. You just get the title of the sound effect.
That's it. I feel like that's not true.
No, that
It is true.
Is it? Oh,
and
You have
I-
to pick it based on name.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it work is that you don't hear like the sound itself, you just get the title of it. And so you, as the person who picked it, also are hearing it for the first time when the judge hears it to judge it. And so like the title might make sense in your
Right.
brain, but then you hear what it sounds like and it makes no fucking sense at all. Or
It's like even funnier than you.
or yeah, like my
guessed it, or like for a reason you didn't expect.
yeah, my first, I literally remember the first one we did. I didn't understand the game very well, and I picked two things that I thought kind of made sense, and it wasn't really the ones I should have picked if I knew the game based on their names, but the sounds like were really funny the way they worked out and lined up, and whoever was judging picked mine. It was like, oh, that's great. Now I understand this game. Like, but the fact that you don't hear it ahead of time, I think, kind of softens that blow of whoever has the funniest sound effect is going to win, because you don't know what your sound effect is. It says, man crying. Okay, like you can, or car door, or car crash, man crying. Like, it might, like, okay, maybe that works.
Sounds funny already.
Yeah, sounds hilarious.
That's a really good like representation of what it's like to play the game
Yeah.
before the sound effects come into play.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, car crash, man
It's
crying.
just descriptions of sound effects, and you're like, that sounds funny together.
Sure,
Yeah.
they work. The story is like, like I'll be home late, like whatever, like, and you put that in, and then when you actually hear the sound effect, the way they line up makes either no sense at all, or it makes great sense and it's funny. Like, and so I think that eliminates a little bit of that Cards problem of there's not just a funny, like, what is a funny sound effect? Like, full stop. Like, it's
A
hard.
fart sound.
Yeah, okay. And we never had a fart. Nailed it. But, like, yeah, if there was fart sound in there, then, okay, that was going to win, and, fuck this round. It doesn't matter what anybody else said. But the fact that you don't just... it's harder to just say, this sound is funny, than to say, like, this combination of words are absurd together and gross, and everybody's going to think is like, ugh, like, oh my god, I can't believe that's a card. So I think it works. I think it works better than the cards concept.
No, yeah, I would agree with that, but I feel like there's something about it where I feel like there's something about like the time investment or the fact that like it's so in your own head when you're thinking about the like sound effects going together. Like you'll put together car crash, man crying, and you're like, that's so good. Like you believe in that combination, and then the person doesn't pick it. Like it's just one of those things where I feel like it really highlights the difference between like people's perceptions, and it can feel dissatisfying when you play Earwax, is all I'm saying.
I love it.
I mean, I think it is a good game, and I do think we should have played it more, given how much we've played these games.
Yeah.
I won't disagree with that.
What else we want to talk about?
The No Clip Podcast.
Of the No Clip Podcast?
Those were good sound effects.
Yes.
Release
Release
structure, silence.
Of the
Clip
No Clip Podcast.
Yes.
Intrigue me, and I will engage if I find it suitably intriguing.
Well, that's
What a tantalizing offer, Chad.
just how conversations work, Chad.
I'm telling you this I'm giving you this
Uh-huh.
because I will let you know also that if you don't intrigue me,
Fuck you.
I'm cutting it out.
And no, that's okay. Just cut me. Just cut me right now. It's not that good. I want to be
This
honest.
is how
with
Chad
you.
operates at
Person to
cocktail
person.
parties. Is he just goes up to strangers and is like, "I'm going to give you a chance to talk to me. If I like what you have to say, I might stick around. If not, I'm leaving."
Chad, enemy of subtext.
What's
Rutherman.
amazing is that people try, you know?
What?
You would think that people would just run away from a guy like that.
Oh,
no,
okay.
people like to rise to that challenge.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
We're taking this joke very seriously. Which is what we do here.
Hmm. At the No Clip Podcast,
Yes.
bastion of seriousness for
100 years.
Minus 95.
Yes.
My dick's gotten bigger since I started.
Do we have final thoughts? Who wants to go first? We have
I'll
so
go.
many people
I'll
here.
go.
Janelle,
Me,
final
me,
thoughts.
Me,
Hit
me,
me.
me. I feel like recently when we've been on podcasts, we've been talking about games that bring people together and ways that we're kind of supplementing our social lives in a time when we're still in lockdown. We haven't really been able to spend quality time in person with people. And so Jackbox is a great game to play in one living room when everyone is there in person, but it's also designed, at least in part, I would say, with the intent of being played remotely. And that people can, even if they're not participating, watch from anywhere in the world if they're on your Steam friends list. And I think that it is, regardless of what your group dynamic is, a good investment in, like, the classic game night. Whether your friends all live in the same town or across the world. And I really am glad that we can do Jackbox nights and spend time together even when we're apart.
Aww. The first time I think I've said "aw" actually in the entirety of this podcast.
I don't have a very interesting final thoughts, so I guess I will go next. I think it's hard to make a good party game, and they've succeeded in making a number of good ones. And like, I think the variety is really the strength of Jackbox, and that probably has something to do with its, like, longevity. I mean, we've been playing it for years now, and we still, when we sit down and do Jackbox, we have a lot of fun with it. Like, the games have not gotten stale. And so I think, like, if I could say the one thing I would say most in its favor is that, like, they have put together a collection of games that are, like, consistently are engaging and fun to play over, like, a really long period of time, which is not easy to do for a party game. So
I
Yeah,
guess
mean,
I'll go next.
Oh, sorry. I was just about to step on.
I was
your
actually
feet.
going to suggest Steven,
Oh, no.
because we're
Yeah.
all on
Yeah.
the same circuit here.
Sure, Steven, you go.
Yeah, I was the next one in my series of screens to the right of Daniel's face, and so I felt like I was next. And
for it.
yeah, I don't have a lot more to add beyond what Daniel Janelle said. So, I think I really love Jackbox, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to sum up, I guess, because I think it's a great party game, and it is. I know what I want to say, and I feel like it's a shitty thing to say. So I guess I could just go ahead and say it because I've already gone down that road.
wind it up, baby.
Why
Let's
not?
go.
Why not do it? I feel like playing Jackbox with your friends is a great way to evaluate, like, your relationship with those people and if they are clever people or not. Like, I really have it. Just again, like, I kind of have, like, two in my life. I guess I have, like, these two different groups. I have you guys, my friends from back home, and then I have my friends here in Florida, who are very different groups of people in a lot of different ways.
Who we've already established are morons.
Yeah, and one of those ways is they, like, my friends here. I love, I enjoy spending time with on a regular basis, and we do a lot of fun things together. But if I was going to put together, like, my team trivia group, it wouldn't be them. Like, it's just like and like clever people to, like, act with in an improv situation, because it's something maybe some of them could be good at if they have to practice. It's just super out of their comfort zone. And so I think Jackbox is kind of one of those things that, I don't know, I really appreciate it. Like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, it is the first thing that we did together that I can remember, as like a group. But
Other than wear costumes and get really drunk on the streets of Morgantown.
yeah, and maybe we might have played our one-off D&D session before that, but like it Jackbox definitely stands out to me as a thing that for this group of friends in my life was something we did together, and it's something I look forward to doing every time we bring it up. Like Andrew brings it up, like played Jackbox this weekend. Like, oh yeah, sounds like fun. Like, and I know what I'm getting. I know like we're gonna get together and we're all gonna have funny jokes and lots of good goofs based on the like names of the codes to enter the rooms. Is everybody like people are gonna come up with clever, funny names? Like, it's just gonna be a good time, and I can count on you guys for a good time with it. And so yeah, like Jackbox is a great party game, but I don't know. It's even better when you have like a group of friends who really know each other. So I like it a lot.
I guess I'll go next. I'm next up in the rotation. I agree with the room here. It's hard to put together final thoughts on 7 party packs, compilations of party games, but I think focusing in on the fact that they're party games is a good way to do it, because like we've played other things together. Like we've played like Tabletopia, which hosts a lot of board games virtually, and Tabletop Simulator and things like that. And Jackbox really does it for me in a way that those don't, by being like very accessible. And as I said, like you can play them with your parents, you can play them with a group of friends you don't know super well, but there's that depth. I think as Steven was getting at very early in the cast, where like if you're really familiar with a group of people, it just really enriches the experience. You can have in-jokes, you can cater your answers to specific people, and like you can really explore, or like maybe not explore, but like incorporate your relationships with like the people you know into your answers in a way that's interesting and a lot of fun. Or you could play it more casually with like, you can play it at work. Like, you know, it works on both ends of the spectrum and is fun and brings people together. And it really succeeds on that level in the way that a lot of other games don't. It really like, it doesn't like maybe break down the walls, like the skill level walls, like where some people might be better, some people might be worse, but like it makes them like transparent. It makes them not matter. And people can just have fun with them. And I think that's the real strength. And I think they have really strong visual presentation. They're very memorable in the way that like some other games aren't. Like I remember the aesthetics and like things like in Fibbage, where they go to the 3rd round and it's just like a number 3 and it's like tied to railroad tracks, and there's like a whole scene that's animated, and then like it gets up before the train comes and it's just like 3, and then it fades into the round, and it's just, you know, like they did put it through all that effort just for that gag, and I appreciate that stuff. Like it's a fun, lighthearted, approachable, fun game that brings people together, and I think it really succeeds on that level in the way that not a lot of other things do. So that's my muddled, all over the place final thoughts on the Jackbox Party Pack. If you haven't played it somehow, if you just listen to this podcast, if you're one of the 5 people, give it a try. Get some people together.
Find friends, as Andy.
Yeah, get friends.
Get fucking friends.
Get friends,
now.
you loser.
Yeah, correct. As someone with friends, I want to say thank you.
Geez.
Thank you for being my friend, friends. It's been wonderful to have friends. Correct. But moving away from my own personal superiority, which has been the general theme of episode 100, and into the superiority and the accomplishments of this series specifically, like, historically speaking, video games have an advantage, one of the advantages, over tabletop board games, in that it can be made structurally impossible to make an illegal move. If, you know, you can't accidentally start with too many hit points when you're rolling up, a new save file on an RPG, in the way that you can accidentally give someone too many of a particular kind of card in a card game. And Jackbox leverages that advantage, which is itself an accessible thing. You can't, think of all the times when you've been playing card games with friends and you've had to be like, oh, wait, no, stop, don't do that. You can't make that move. That is an accessibility advantage that video games have, but it has generally and historically been gated behind other accessibility disadvantages like physical hardware, expensive equipment, and probably chief among all of them, controller competency. Jackbox is able to leverage both the accessibility advantages of conventional video games by trying to downplay the disadvantages that's also inherent to the medium by just taking controllers and throwing them out the window. And I think that on its own is going to be enough to keep the barrier to entry of these games low enough to keep them constantly recycling with new ideas year after year into the indefinite future. And just because of the sheer volume of games that they're going to be creating, there's going to be high variance at the end there. But I do think that they have a proven track record at this point that I'm willing to kind of put myself behind them in the future too. These are good games. They're not all good games, but most of them are good games. And you don't need that much in order to create a social space in which you can be entertained with the people around you. And that's all that you need for a party game to be successful. And this does enough to help get you there.
I've cheated all of you so hard.
I've cheated in Jackbox the whole time.
The whole time. No.
He had the Game Shark
I am
for
Cookie
Jackbox.
Masterson.
Game Shark.
By having everyone go before me in final thoughts. The one thing that I do want to mention that does separate it a little bit from what everyone else has said, though JJ verged on taking it from me, is that we, as a podcast about video games, have never talked about a board game for this exact reason. And this is the closest that I think I've come not only to wanting to dive into a board game style game in this way on this podcast, but into enjoying a board game. And this kind of like party game atmosphere is something that I always appreciate when we do sit around to play the game. And I don't know, it is that accessibility thing is a good point. Nobody ever really has an issue with playing the game. So even if it's not somebody that you're very close to, you can always invite people in, and even if they are terrible at it, they will often still have a good time. So I think that's a good thing to leave it with, as we are terrible at podcasting, but we still have a damn good time.
After 100 episodes, we've not improved at all.
Thank you for listening to 100 episodes of No Clip, which you probably didn't do up to this point, but that is also fine.
But if you did, send us an email. We'll tell you good,
Good
job.
We're sorry, Gunther, for scaring you away when we shit on Minish Cap. What are we talking about next time?
Next time, for episode 101, we're going to be talking about Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I personally am very happy, even though when it was looming, I was very unhappy that we ended up having episode 100 5 years all land in October.
We do usually have jam-packed October.
Which is also our Halloween season here. But it does feel really appropriate that we're culminating all of this together into the origin month of October. And Amnesia is one of the it is the game that repopularized horror games in the modern age. So we wanted to go back and take a look at that one. That'll be our first thing for Halloween.
Really couldn't do the Wonderful 101, huh? Really didn't.
Oh, for episode 101? No, not scary enough.
You guys should redo 999 for episode 999.
We will.
We will, yeah.
100%
We could do
guaranteed.
we can do the sequel, Virtue's Last Reward.
I'm willing to promise anything for
I mean-
episode 999.
my favorite video game journalist personality, whatever you want to call him, of all time, loves that game, so I'd be willing to talk about it.
All right. until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at NoClip Podcast, or anybody.
Splattershop.pro.
There we go.
Flashback.pro.
I figured everybody would be excited to get that in. There you can find links to our YouTube play. You can find all of our old episodes, including nothing like this episode. You listen to the Divinity Original Sin episode, which featured all of our remote guests, as well as Rascal, which featured all of us except Janelle, or
Animal
Life is
Crossing, which
Strange.
featured just me.
yeah, just Janelle.
That's
and
actually-
not JJ.
That's actually a good episode. Like one of my favorites, actually.
It is a
Check
good
it
one.
out.
We had another one that was like,
Good.
Life is Strange
Good.
2.
yeah,
You had at least
Phoenix-
one other good episode.
Yeah, we had,
yeah,
at
we
least
had like
one,
one
yeah.
episode. that
Phoenix
was
Wright
good.
was also a good one.
That was a good one.
Oberdin. All the guest episodes.
Why are you flaring up gang signs when you say the words Oberdin?
Well, it's for-
Oberdin?
We have a different like hand signal for each combination of guests on the show.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. Goodbye. Welcome back again. Surprise. We're going to forego our usual just putting 3 seconds of us going, oh, we fucked up the recording, with this discussion that we're going to have now. It's really unfocused and unclear what it is we're going to talk about, but I want to start by saying that I really appreciate like all Steven, Dan, and Janelle for coming on to do this, because like it's weird because like the podcast in my day-to-day life does not play a huge role in the way that I interact with other people. But each of you have been on it before. And even though we don't talk about the podcast a whole lot in our like social interactions, it's good to know that you guys were willing to come back to do this, because like 100 episodes is something I've been trying to convince myself is actually a pretty big deal, that we've continuously done this for as long as we have. So thank you, I guess.
I think 100 episodes is a big deal. I mean, I like... You guys don't get anything like material out of doing the podcast, so like it is something you have to like make the effort to put together and do, and it's not like there's some podcast premises that is basically like, let's just sit down and bullshit for 2 hours and that's an episode, which is great. Like there are plenty of podcasts that I like that do that, but like you actually have to sit down and play the games, and like that takes a lot of time. And like I have listened to every episode of the podcast, most of them more than once, with the exception of the ones that I'm on that I usually avoid. But I don't. Like, yeah, like all kidding aside, I really like that you guys do this. I appreciate it a lot. I get a lot out of it, and I hope that you continue to do it. I enjoy listening to you guys talk about games, and it's weird because in like the discourse about podcasts, you see people talk about like parasocial relationships a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I am in the like really unique privileged position of having a parasocial relationship with people that I also have very normal social relationships with. Like I listen to the podcast like at work when I can and stuff, and like it feels like I'm hanging out with you guys, which is like weird because I also do hang out with you normally.
I'm glad we can be the balm that can allow you to get through your daily grind.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I really like the podcast a lot, and I hope you keep doing it. And congratulations on 100 episodes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Janelle, have we
Cheers.
changed your life in any material way?
And JJ, come back to the podcast.
Yeah.
I'll stop talking now.
Hashtag JJ come back to the podcast.
Hashtag fucking wear masks and stop partying 3 blocks away from my street so the governor has to close things down.
Yeah, I'm not blaming you for that.
It's a very straight line between me getting back to the podcast and the world getting better, so... literally everyone listening to this can do their very small part to get me back onto the podcast.
It's true.
do your part.
Wear your mask. Wash
anyway.
your hands. Socially distance. Speaking about the podcast specifically, like I don't listen to the podcast. I'm a bad friend.
Burn.
I don't. Well, I would never ever listen to a podcast that I'm on because I hate the sound of my own voice and the self-loathing is deep. But I don't listen to podcasts because, as I think we've talked about a lot, I was kind of a late bloomer with video games. And so most of the games you guys play, I'm like, well, I've never played this. I wouldn't probably know what they're talking about, whatever. But I'm happy and proud that you guys had an idea, talked about it for a while, and didn't just kind of let it die. Like, there's a lot of things that people talk about doing maybe one day, perhaps sort of, if XYZ thing happens first, or maybe next year or whatever, but like, you guys actually talked about doing it. You started it, and you committed to it, and I think that it's really cool also because when I'm thinking of longevity, like, this will be, even if you guys stop at 127, or 158, or 362, or whatever, like, that is a backlog of memories from a time in your life that will forever exist on Splattershot.pro, the elite corner of the internet.
Because we will never drop that domain name.
No.
Until Nintendo
And I can
pays me
continue
that
to like
$1.
text
It's
you guys
worth all
about-
$30 a year or whatever.
I can continue to text you guys about some obscure thing you said 5 years ago.
Yeah, and we have to justify it in some way.
Right.
I do. I want to.
Yeah, but
sorry. I didn't.
You want to interrupt Janelle? You want to cut me off? Congratulations.
I'm cutting off a separate cutoff if that's the case.
No, it's fine. I said my piece. I'll
Yeah.
toss it back to you, you regular boys. You
It's
regular,
interesting,
degular
yeah.
boys with all of your hard work you put into it. I just come on here and get to talk about the cute villagers that I hang out with and yell at you about your inexplicable to me love of the Souls games. So,
Yeah,
It's
I
all
want
you.
to. I want to spin off of a bit of what she said there.
Dark Souls. You
No,
want to
no,
talk
Dark
some more?
Souls- you wanna talk about
Dark Souls.
kind of. The question is more.
What's your
Janelle
favorite
and
Dark
other
Souls
people
game?
that I've talked to have said that they will not listen to the podcast at times because they do not know the game that we're talking about.
Mhm.
And I feel like this is more or less a good enough time to address, I think, the fact that we don't cover the games that are like in the zeitgeist at the moment as a, not necessarily as a rule, maybe as more of a coincidence or like an alignment of tastes, but we've done things in the past, like we talked about The Last of Us right after the part 2 came out, and we did the Tony Hawk thing before the Tony Hawk thing. We did Detective Pikachu the day before the movie released, and then is like the occasional touch into that, but that's never been the explicit goal of the podcast. And I want to ask just the people who are collected here, do you think it would be a thing to do to go into that, or should we stay, and why? I have my own opinions on this, obviously, but
Well, in my opinion, like, I think from the beginning, the idea of the podcast has always been a book club, but with video games. I feel like we have not expressed that well.
that's part of the reason for the new like tagline.
Yeah, that's why we're doing the new thing at the beginning. But like, and we've actually, like, we have a Discord server. We've accrued some fans, and like, shout out to you guys, because like, I never thought like we'd have people who would want to like consistently talk to us.
right.
You know, like,
People
it's
that we don't know.
it's like
Yeah.
even it's like we are not popular at all, but we have like what, like
Oh, speak for
15
yourselves.
people who regularly post in the Discord, and that's like crazy to me.
Mm.
You know,
We've never been
it's like, and I don't
framed.
know any of them. You know, it's just like
Sure.
no one's ever yelled at us. which
Almost
is-
Yeah.
by virtue of the fact that we have a 15-person fan base, is like we have an amazing community because of it. Like a very tight knit
Yeah, but,
for
like,
a reason.
yeah. Even though like I feel like we haven't like the podcast started as like a super casual idea we never thought would grow into anything, but like it seems like we do have some people that listen like consistently. Like iTunes is really hard to get metrics on, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know exactly how many it is, but it's at least like a couple hundred views on a video or whatever, or on an upload.
Right.
And like that's more than I ever expected. And like the fact that we have, like, as I said, like on the Discord, we've accrued a fan base of people that care about what we say. Like it is like kind of surreal, even though it's very small. And I don't know, it gives me a little bit of imposter syndrome. And then also on the other hand, it also kind of makes me feel like, well, how come the podcast doesn't grow, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you know, you kind of go back and forth between like wanting it to do better and like being amazed that it does as well as it does. Such is the nature of a small podcast, I guess. Mm-hmm. But you know, I doubt he'll ever listen to this, but like the podcast was like already worth it, but the thing that like put the seal on it for me was when Jack King Spooner fucking joined our Discord server and talked to us.
Yeah.
We covered an indie game called Dujana, and it was made by one guy mostly, I think. He may have had some other things, you know, collaborated with, but whatever. And he somehow was aware of our episode, listened to it, joined our Discord, and talked to us about it. And
Right.
That's like fucking crazy. So,
And I think that's an argument as good as any that I've heard for the other side to continue to cover things that nobody's ever heard of or seen before. Because the part of what I like to do personally is to kind of gather a collection of shit that is like unique to me, where like I will come to somebody and say, and they'll be like, "Oh, what have you been playing?" They'll be like, "Oh, I play God of War," and I'm like, "Okay, but have you played Thing?" And they'll be like, "What? I've never heard of Thing," and I'll be like, "It's great. Here's what it's about. Here's the game, and like also, you know, when you're done with it, you listen to us talk about it for an hour." But I don't normally throw that last part in. It's just sort of an implied thing, and I like that. Like I like the idea of covering things that aren't super like the talk of the town, and it's not interesting to say that I think that AAA games have become homogenized. I think that is a lame, boring criticism that is true, but it's not like an argument that can really be like substantiated. So.
Yeah, but like my favorite year of the podcast is probably year 3, and like just bouncing off what you said,
Okay.
and I think it's because of our tastes, like the three of us have like a very like shared kind of middle ground in our tastes, and we picked a lot of in that year AAA games that were like experimental or different or took a chance. Like we talked about Nier Automata, we talked about Hellblade, we talked about Persona 5. Like we talked about a lot of games in that year that have really stuck with me. And like that's when I think about the podcast, that's what I like the most about it, is that I've always liked video games, and the podcast gets me to play games that I wouldn't have normally played. It's like a book club, basically. That's what I keep coming back to. That's the element of the podcast I feel like we don't express enough or talk about enough. It's like it's about trying to like spread your tastes, and it's about the times where you like play a game that you really like but no one you know has played it, so you can't talk about it and you feel frustrated. That's been me with like Xenoblade for like 5 years. But like,
and we, your friends, have done nothing to help.
Exactly. Yeah, but like in the podcast is like an outlet. It's supposed to be like an outlet for that, at least in my mind. And like, you know, like with the Discord we've built up, and like that's like the golden ideal of the podcast for me. So like we can build a community of people who play these games on the schedule with us that can talk about them in a way that like you couldn't in your normal life, because, you know, other people aren't, your friends aren't playing the games.
You can force the alignment that you need
Yes.
for productive friend
Yeah,
conversation.
I think
can
you guys
force-
should. I think you guys should continue to play whatever you want. Like some of my favorite episodes are like I love that Atlas Trauma Center episode, and like that, you know, that's not a game that was like
Yeah, like
dominating the gaming news cycle when you guys talked about it.
Oh
But
yeah,
you
I'm
also
already
talk
claiming
about,
that game's
like-
already forgotten.
Yeah.
Like I love the Call of Duty episode, and like Call of Duty, of course, is like currently very relevant, but not like the first Call of Duty. So like the idea of, I don't think you guys would really like sincerely consider doing this, but just doing like whatever is the most talked about game like at the time that you record the next episode, I think would be like kind of a boring like way to change up the format of the show. I think like the variety of the catalog that you guys have looked at is one of the things that I like a lot about the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Like they've become popular since they came out, but like two of my favorite games we've covered are Nier and Persona, which I just mentioned couple minutes ago. But like those games have become like somewhat popular, but like those are games I never would have played otherwise that I like really latched onto. Like I still listen to the Persona 5 soundtrack. And like I still like occasionally I will listen to the Nier one too. It's a little bit more like you have to be in the mood for it.
Yes.
But like I still listen to that one as well. Those games caught me off guard, and like I heard about them, and they were the kind of games where I'm like, I'd kind of be interested in that. And like I had the podcast actually push me to play them.
Mhm.
And that's, I don't know, I guess a really big value, I think. Like I already said it, but like I always grew up playing games and liked them, but like I'd never really branched out and like played a bunch because like games were a big time investment, and I really like that the podcast enables me to do that. Like I feel like I've played twice as many games in my life like already, just doing like as much of the podcast as we have. Then like I've probably played twice as many games in my life as I would have otherwise if we hadn't done the podcast. So like I really value that.
I understand. I've been kind of obsessed with figuring out a way that I can trick you guys into agreeing to expand the horizons and boundaries of the podcast. I have been unsuccessful
No,
so far.
I mean, I'm into the idea. I used to be more stingy about it
Mhm.
because I felt like I wouldn't have anything interesting to say about certain kinds of games. But like, which is why we didn't do Halo until
no.
when we did.
I did not mean about different
Yeah, I
kinds
feel
of
like he
games.
was just leading
No.
into a joke.
Well, then never mind.
Or it's a half joke.
A
'Cause
half
I am
joke,
serious.
sorry.
There have been many times, some serious, where I've attempted to want to do some weird wonky thing under the branding of the No Clip podcast
Mhm.
that has been shut down, and we will see if history judges your decision lightly. But as far as the next thing, that after COVID finally descends back into the darkness and I can try and flourish again as my truest self, I am curious how you guys would feel about bringing the No Clip podcast to the HoloLive universe and allowing me, once I rebuy my computer and get like the full VR kit, to be you're working so hard, Chad, to not interrupt you, man. I appreciate it so much, because I really do want to I think I can bring us a lot of success if I get it on the ground floor of this VR anime women kind of the whole movement that's really going on YouTube right now. I think this might be the moment that we were made for, and I'm willing to invest the hardware to get in there anyway. And I just wanted to bounce it off you guys, because one way or the other, I'm getting the pucks and I'm getting the headset. I will have an index.
I think what we need to do is we need to corner the market before and also long after it becomes a thing where you put in a CD-ROM and we appeared on your desktop as just 3 cutouts of us, holograms.
When you order a box of Domino's pizza
Yeah.
and then put it down, yeah. it'd be
and
good.
we just sort of commentate on whatever it is that you're doing.
Mhm.
I'd be willing to work on that project. with
Okay,
you.
so I want to confirm, you are saying now live on the internet that if and when I purchase all the necessary materials and stream myself in this environment, you will put it under the No Clip branding? Is this your explicit consent?
I am
Sorry,
not.
legal's cutting in. What?
I'm an old man. It is documented on the podcast many a time. I stopped being in touch with what the kids liked when I was in like the 6th grade. But
The last thing that Andy remembers the kids like is dodgeball.
But I am totally in favor of any of the three of us using the YouTube channel or whatever, the Twitch that we never use, to stream and do whatever. So I encourage this.
Excellent.
Even though I don't know what you're doing with anime women or whatever you said.
A lot of people spend a lot of time in their life trying to hide what it is they do with anime women.
If you know what I'm saying.
The
Are you about to describe HoloLive to Andy?
No, I
Oh,
was
thank
going
God.
to. I was going to briskly move on to another topic.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't necessarily know that we had all that much to say about the show. Like, I feel like it is. Our works are self-evident. But I would like. I do want to know. Personally speaking, I feel like this has given me an outlet to sort of like practice and learn and become better at media criticism. And in addition to that, just like fucking sentence construction as a concept, the spoken word, like being able to actually piece together my thoughts in a way that is like, that people can comprehend and make sense in a way. And then later on adding like, maybe I can also be entertaining while I do it. I feel like this podcast has helped me grow as a communicator a lot. In addition to my ability to like look at a piece of media and like understand exactly what it is that like I'm supposed to be taking from it, or identifying even what it is that I am taking from it. Did anybody have a similar experience with this?
100% yes. That's a big topic to bite off a piece of, but like, yeah, I would agree. Like, I feel like I've always been someone that's like hated the sound of my voice. I know Daniel said earlier that he doesn't listen to the ones that he's on because he hates the sound of his own voice, but like, that was me early days of the podcast. Like, I never listened to the episodes because I didn't want to listen to myself. And I feel like I've both gotten used to the sound of my own voice, and I've also just gotten better at articulating myself, so it's not as awkward to listen to myself talk. So yeah, I also feel like it's helped me grow in like a public speaking sense, or like whatever, just the way that I speak. I stutter less. I say and like less. I still do those things, but I just do them less, and it's much more digestible to listen to. And yeah, like, I don't know. I really value that. I never thought that like listening to myself talk would be something I'd ever be comfortable with. And now I am, because I do it all the time.
Good for you.
Thank you.
We're here. Always will be. Except when there's a pandemic, then I won't be here, but I'll be back.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing, I forgot what the other aspect was. Also, I appreciate what you said, JJ. I'm not glossing over it, but media criticism and like games criticism. Like I digest a lot of video game criticism, like media myself, and I feel like the podcast is gonna be like an outlet to like apply that. Especially like once JJ left, I felt like I had to pick up my own slack on the podcast a lot, so I started taking notes more, especially for Pocket, because I took Pocket super like way too casually at first, and I feel like the first couple episodes are terrible because of it. I feel like I've really kind of culminated like a sense of like my understanding of media and how to express my thoughts on it in a way that I really value as well because of the podcast.
Right. Yeah, anything?
Be prepared. When I return,
That's the motto of the Boy Scouts.
When I return, it will not be subtle, and you will know.
Yeah. Also, yeah. Like, let's hashtag bring JJ back.
Yeah.
All 15 people on the Discord
Tweet
that.
at no one. JJ, as far as I'm aware, does not have a public-facing Twitter account.
Also,
I have one. It has exactly, I think, 3 tweets ever. One of them is a Nubs in the Tubs joke that I made in Splatoon and posted publicly. Posted hashtag neoliberalism, of course. And then 2 of them are conversations with someone who used to be a member of, I think, the West Virginia legislature, who is now convicted of sex crimes. And that is, I think, the totality of everything I've done on Twitter.
All right.
One other thing.
Bat in 1,000.
Indeed.
That's some quality Twitter content.
Anything from you guys? Want to jump in, say anything? I don't know. You were kind of the one that suggested doing this at the beginning. I don't know if there was anything you wanted to mention.
No,
I wanted to ask. Get really
I
into our
didn't-
heads.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we would set aside some time to reflect on 100 episodes of NoClip. And we have done that, so thank you for indulging me, especially having me on as a guest more than once, because I also feel like I don't do this as much as you guys, obviously, but I feel like I have improved in what I bring to the table when I come on, and like some of the earlier episodes, I kind of feel similarly to you guys that like maybe what I brought was like not the best. So thanks for bringing me back.
Yeah,
I'll be even better. I'll be even better next time.
I'll go ahead and just follow that up with thanks for bringing me back as well. I know my first appearance on the Rascal episode was kind of a goof.
An all-timer.
It was an all-time goof, but that was the first time I had like done any actual media criticism ever and been asked to articulate an opinion on a thing. And so that was an interesting experience, and I appreciated it. I thought it was cool to be on a podcast. And then from like there to now, I think stuff like our book club has been huge for me, like learning how to articulate my thoughts on something and give that criticism. And also, I think when I was on that first episode, I didn't really even listen to podcasts myself. And so I didn't really have that sense of what it even sounds like to listen to people discuss a piece of media. So I'm glad that episode totally didn't suck because I was on it. But so I appreciate being brought back for another round. And obviously at this point, that I have a lot to say about everything. So I'm always willing to share those thoughts. Yeah, and I know, I haven't listened to. I would say I've listened to more episodes of NoClip than Janelle, but less than Daniel. So I'm in that middle ground.
Seems reasonable.
Reasonable.
Somewhere between 0 and 100.
So, yeah, between 0 and all of them.
Very
But-
safe.
Yeah, it definitely was. There was a time when we weren't talking to each other as much as we do now. When I would go if there was if we weren't playing D&D or didn't have any other specific thing, it would be several months in between like group conversations like this, and that's when I was living alone here in Florida and would put on an episode of NoClip on YouTube while I was playing video games by myself. And like Daniel said, like it feels like you're hanging out with everybody, and so I definitely appreciated that at times in my life. So it's been a cool way to keep in touch, even if we're not actually talking.
We're always here to speak.
Yeah.
It does sound like how podcasts tend to be. Yeah. I'm glad that we could continue doing this. I'm glad that we've been doing this, and I will be happy to continue doing this at least for one more episode. Because replaying Amnesia has given me a big old Amnesia appreciation. Saved it. Shit. Goodbye. Thank you. Smash the like button.
Here's to 100 more episodes.
Here's to 100 more. Let's clink some glasses together and make it.
Oh
happen.
no, I finished all the drinks.
Yeah, everybody,
already.
don't worry. Woo!
Okay, that works.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
fine,
forward.
all right.
Yes.
We will never stop.
There it is.
There it is. But no, seriously though, Chad,
Cut his mic.
Chad was insincere. Thanks to everybody. It means a lot to everybody who's in the Discord. It means a lot to you guys, especially coming on, supporting us, talking to us about the podcast, showing interest in it. I know when we started, I never thought anyone would give one fuck about it. So everything means a lot.
Everything does mean a lot.
But you could be doing more.
Yeah, we could be better though. I apologize.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.